Chapter 2373. How are Cui Hongshan and these 6 dumb birds? Xiao Hua thought as his mind entered the space again. Cui Hongshan and the other 5 were still lying casually on the ground and hadn't woken up. They were exactly the same as when they had been sent in 5 years ago. The only difference was that Little Silver, who had been berated by Little Yellow to watch over the 6 people, was now jumping from one person to another, and then from another to another. The hair on their heads had been messed up by Little Silver, and there were even some bald spots. Damn it, how am I supposed to explain this to these people? Xiao Hua was both angry and amused. Little Silver was jumping happily on the 6 people. Sensing Xiao Hua's mind, he immediately stopped and stood on the tip of Cui Hongshan's nose. He raised his little head and looked up at the sky with his mouse eyes. His 2 pink little paws were clasped in front of his chest, and his little tail swayed casually in front of Cui Hongshan's eyes. Little Yellow, let Little Silver go back. Xiao Hua said to Little Yellow, who was already a little clear-headed. Got it, mother? Little Yellow's voice was still a little lazy. Little Silver then ran around the 6 people like a puff of smoke, and plucked a few more strands of their hair from his little paws. He then quickly ran across the ground and rushed into his own spirit field. What's so fun about this hair? Xiao Hua was speechless. Mother, is this that little girl? Little Yellow suddenly asked. Xiao Hua naturally knew that Little Yellow was talking about that big injured duck. It should be. Mother can't be sure. Boy knows her aura is that little girl's. Little Yellow yawned and said in his heart, but she's seriously injured and her life force is still a little weak. Life force? You know about life force? Xiao Hua was a little astonished. In his heart, Little Yellow was just a little thing that didn't know anything. Boy can think of something as he sleeps as if it's already in the boy's mind. This way your child will slowly understand. Goldie himself was also puzzled. My goodness, what kind of spirit beast is this? Xiao Hua was secretly surprised. However, he exhorted, this has done us a great favor. You watch her carefully. If there's any abnormality, quickly call Mother. I know, Mother. Goldie said disapprovingly. That situation was no different from a rebellious child. Have you grown up? Xiao Hua also felt helpless when he heard the same helpless tone as himself. Xiao Hua's mind left the space. He shrugged his shoulders slightly and took the Phoenix Dharma body back into his body. Immediately, another wave of spiritual pressure came crashing over. Xiao Hua felt his body tighten. His meridians and corporeal body were filled with an extremely large amount of heaven and earth spirit chi. He had no choice but to mobilize a few more primordial spirits to refine the heaven and earth spirit chi. Thanks to the Phoenix Dharma body. As Xiao Hua refined the spiritual energy, he sighed, otherwise, this young master would have already turned into a vengeful spirit 5 years ago. Thinking of the vengeful spirits, Xiao Hua's ears once again produced a mournful sound. Although this sound was covered by the tide of spiritual pressure, a strange kind of fear naturally arose from Xiao Hua's heart. Needless to say, Xiao Hua understood in his heart, this is the unyielding spirit of those cultivators and swordsmen that Tu Hong killed. Forget it, this is also one of this young master's merits. I just don't know if the Buddha's relic can be affected by the spiritual pressure. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, then carefully released the Buddha's relic. Within the spiritual pressure of the Buddha's relic, that golden light flourished, illuminating the surroundings. The vengeful spirits that had faded into the smoke seemed to have seen the beauty of heaven and earth, and swarmed forward like a swarm of bees. And, seeing that the Buddha's relic was not affected by the spiritual pressure, Xiao Hua inwardly nodded, then secretly laughed. Of course, the vengeful spirits are not afraid of the spiritual pressure, so the Buddha's relic is even less afraid. Immediately after, Xiao Hua did not hesitate. The Buddha's relic chanted the 9 syllables of truth, and the brilliant golden descend characters flew out from the Buddha's mouth one by one, landing on each of the vengeful spirits. Those vengeful spirits were originally the vengeful spirits of cultivators and swordsmen, and were filled with unyielding and injustice. When the army character landed on them, a wisp of green smoke immediately flew out from their bodies, and their entire souls became clear. Those souls once again transformed into human form, bowed towards the Buddha's relic and said, "Many thanks to the Venerable One," then immediately disappeared. And that wisp of green smoke also floated within the spiritual pressure, disappearing without a trace. However, at the same time that it disappeared, an even smaller blood-like thing that even Buddha's sense could not detect fell into Xiao Hua's Buddha's heart. It turned into the Buddha's fire, and on top of the Buddha's fire, there was a small red dot that rushed into the tempering of the execution dream. Xiao Hua originally wanted to do merits, but he did not expect that once he did it, he would not be able to stop, and it was delayed for dozens of days. Damn it! This Tu Hong has really committed a great sin. I'm afraid there are close to 100,000 vengeful spirits. In the end, Xiao Hua himself was somewhat angry. He originally thought that it would be good if there were a few thousand, but who would have thought that it would actually increase by 10 times? Moreover, these vengeful spirits actually did not leave, and all of them stayed here, clearly harboring resentment towards Tu Hong. Sigh, if I think about it again, swordsmen are vicious. If this guy did not hold back, if he did not act so ruthlessly, the cultivators would also suffer heavy casualties. Xiao Hua was the most sympathetic towards the suffering of others, and he only needed to put himself in their shoes to immediately understand the difficulties within. In the end, this is a great sword battle. Although these vengeful spirits are pitiful, there is nothing that can be done about it. Who told the sword cultivators to start this great battle? Naturally, this young master can ignore this kind of haggling. However, Tu Hong directly placed my thunder-controlling sect's first small team inside the Great Formation, making it clear that he wants the lives of the 7 of us. No matter what the other cultivators do, we will definitely lose our lives. This karma, this young master will not let it go. A trace of ruthlessness flashed through Xiao Hua's eyes. But why did he do this? Could it be that he received instructions from someone else? It's possible. Maybe Tu Hong and that old ghost Jingru have some kind of friendship. In that case, this young master has implicated Cui Hongshan and the others. Xiao Hua sighed. In these 5 years, his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, while Cui Hongshan and the other 4 had been unconscious for an entire 5 years. Xiao Hua still felt a bit guilty in his heart. Let's talk about it when there's a chance in the future. Xiao Hua thought to himself. Even if there's no benefit, at least we still manage to hold on to our lives, right? You can't resent this young master. Xiao Hua was finding excuses for himself again. After waiting for the last vengeful spirit to finish transcending, Xiao Hua was a bit bewildered. That's not right, that female swordsman's soul is still here, but the other 12? No, the other 20 swordsman's souls are not here? Could it be that their souls have already dissipated? Or are they inside the flying sword? Chapter 2374. Xiao Hua didn't have any feelings for Ling Yunwu and the others. If it weren't for them, he was afraid that he wouldn't have such an opportunity. Since he didn't see the souls of these swordsmen, he was naturally puzzled. Well, even if they are in the flying swords, they have already turned into sword spirits. How can I be afraid of them? Thinking about it, Xiao Hua put away the Buddha Sarira and waved his hand, holding the wishful steel staff in his hand. Xiao Hua tried his best to hit the staff in midair. With a loud bang, the power of the 7 stars array was loosened by the wishful steel staff. Humph, not in the 5 elements, Xiao Hua snorted coldly. This wishful steel staff is really powerful. It directly attacks the power of imprisonment. It's really something that other magic weapons can't do. Now that he had a treasure like the wishful steel staff, Xiao Hua's strength had a place to be used. He raised the wishful steel staff with both hands and struck the power of the 7 stars great array, breaking it little by little. Since the 7 stars array was the secret technique of the Lingfeng sword sect, it must be incomparably powerful. If there was a swordsman presiding over it, it might not be so easy for Xiao Hua to break it. Unfortunately, there were only 12 flying swords. They were dead objects. Even if there were sword spirits in the flying swords, how could they control the array? In less than half an hour, the 7 stars array was broken by the incomparably brave Xiao Hua with the wishful steel staff. As the array was broken, the 12 flying swords wailed at the same time and were about to leave the air. You still want to leave at this time? What wishful thinking. Xiao Hua sneered and waved his big sleeve. The 12 flying swords were imprisoned by him. They obediently stopped in midair. Collect. Xiao Hua waved his sleeve and the 12 flying swords fell into the space. Then Xiao Hua took out the sword from the sword pouch and let his primordial spirit comprehend it. His figure swayed slightly and was about to fly to the ground. However, just as he moved, the spiritual energy swarmed into his body, scaring him. Oh, so that's how it is. This spiritual energy is so powerful. The more you want to escape, the more it will enter. I'm afraid that the vast majority of cultivators and swordsmen will explode like this. Thus, Xiao Hua hurriedly stopped and released the Phoenix Dharma body to block the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. He tried his best to refine the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that entered his body. Forget it, let's just slowly move. After Xiao Hua finished refining his spiritual energy, he didn't dare to be rash and slowly moved towards the edge of the underground Great Formation. Oh, what's this? Xiao Hua had just flown for a moment when he discovered a sawtooth flying sword in front of him. Oh motherfucker. I've been running for my life for so long that I've turned stupid. Xiao Hua immediately realized, if those 12 sword cultivators can transform into flying swords, then the other swordsmen can naturally do the same. The flying swords transformed by the illusory swordsmen are extremely precious. Needless to say, the greedy Xiao Hua began to search again. However, there were more surprises to come. Gradually, Xiao Hua realized that not only were there sword cultivators flying swords, there were also many Dharma treasures of Tao sect cultivators that were left unscathed in the soil. Xiao Hua, who was wild with joy, was so happy that he scratched his ears and cheeks. It was as if he was picking up treasures. He kept them all in his space. However, when he calmed down a little, Xiao Hua remembered, I can't take them all. I still have to go out from here in a while and return to Sky Patrol City. If I loot everything here, how can I explain it? After thinking for a while, Xiao Hua found the main point of his search. When he arrived at the edge of the great array, he used his divine sense to carefully examine it, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously revealed a smile. This edge was different from before. It wasn't that kind of tyrannical and unstable restriction. Instead, it was a kind of sturdy restriction. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment and used his transcendence vision to look, and found the weak point of the restriction. Without hesitation, he took out the rabbit talisman and imbued it with his transcendence energy. When several rabbit talismans were embedded into the spirit array, the edges of the spirit array began to change. The previously stable restriction began to show signs of loosening. Once these signs of loosening appeared, it immediately became like a whirlwind that swept away the clouds. It could no longer be contained. This is bad. When Xiao Hua saw this, he immediately understood. Although the edge of the array was stable, and the place he had touched was only a small corner, it had already caused the entire array to lose its balance. The loss of balance at the edge of the array wasn't a big deal. The key was that the spiritual howl within the array was constantly washing over it. Although 5 years had already passed, the spiritual howl hadn't even subsided by 20%. Once the edge of the array lost its balance, the spiritual howl immediately increased, and rushed toward Xiao Hua's location like a swarm of bees. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent, and hastily summoned his Phoenix Dharma body, and with a wave of his hand he collected several rabbit talismans. Wong! A thunderous howl resounded from within the array. The stirred-up spiritual howl came from behind Xiao Hua, and from every possible direction, slapped towards the loosened edge of the array. Xiao Hua could only summon his Phoenix Dharma body, and at the same time the crystal thorns in his body rapidly revolved. He also activated his mental cultivation method and secret technique, and did his utmost to refine the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Woo, boom, with merely a huge impact the edge of the array was broken, and with a sound like a chain the entire array completely collapsed. In an instant, an incomparably powerful force was born from within the spirit stone mine of MT Springgold. With a thunderous momentum, it slapped towards the surroundings, rushed into the air and rushed towards the ground. Boom, as if a dozen nascent soul cultivators had joined forces to attack, MT Springgold trembled, and countless mountain rocks and dust rushed into the sky, and countless dust fragments spread in all directions. The entire heaven and earth was completely covered by the dust. That incomparably pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth also instantly filled the area within a radius of several li. Furthermore, it spread towards the surroundings at an extremely fast speed. In merely an instant, a deep pit of several li in size formed within MT Springgold. Woo, following closely, countless hurricanes accompanied by the diffusion of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth formed in the surroundings of MT Springgold. All the trees, snow, mountain rocks and other things within 100 li were swept up into the sky, and were thrown far away. What's going on? Just as the array exploded, in the air several li away from MT Springgold, there were two groups of disciples patrolling. One group was made up of Tao sect disciples, and the other group was made up of sword cultivators. All of them were in the middle stage of foundation establishment. A Tao sect cultivator at the peak of the middle stage of foundation establishment suddenly felt that something was amiss. Just as he had the time to shout out, the hurricane attacked him, and a powerful force swept through his body. It was extremely barbaric and also extremely easy to tear him into pieces. There was simply no room for resistance. The other dozen cultivators were even more miserable. Before they could even think, they were swept up by the hurricane, and just as they were blown a few feet into the air, they were immediately torn apart. The group of sword cultivators were slightly stronger than the other cultivators. Their bodies were sturdy, and the flying swords under their feet were also fast. Unfortunately, they were only able to fly for several tens of li before they were pulled down from their flying swords by a powerful and chaotic force. They were forcefully thrown into the hurricane. The most pitiful one was a level 5 swordsman. Although he tried his best to control the flying sword to fly, there was still a broken flying sword in the hurricane. The huge force blew the flying sword upside down and directly penetrated the swordsman's chest with the sword hilt. It did not stop for a moment at all and rushed into the air with a whistling sound. It flew straight into the mountain rock 1,000 feet away and only stopped after it was inserted for hundreds of feet. With such a powerful force, it was no wonder that Tu Hong was so calm. He was absolutely not afraid that someone would break the array. Even a nascent soul cultivator would find it difficult to protect himself from such a huge explosion of spiritual qi, right? Unfortunately, no matter how much he calculated, he still missed out on one. That was Xiao Hua, who was breaking the array within the array. The inside of the array was completely different from the outside. Although it was only the boundary of the array, the difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. When the array collapsed, Xiao Hua tried his best to escape into the array, using the Phoenix Dharma body to protect his body. When he could no longer resist the force of the explosion of spiritual qi, he stopped resisting and rushed out of the array along with the hurricane produced by the spiritual qi. Moreover, Xiao Hua was breaking the array from the bottom. His figure followed the hurricane and rushed straight into the sky. Xiao Hua's figure gradually accelerated. Those magic treasures and flying swords that were enough to kill golden core cultivators were the same speed as him, and some were even in front of him. They simply did not pose any threat to him. Chapter 2375. These 7 people came from the direction of Mt. Chuanjin's array. Zhang Xian immediately understood and shouted, "They are the disciples of the patrol team in front of us. Quickly save them." Hearing this, everyone hurriedly took action. Using magic tools and other methods, they pulled Xiao Hua and the others out from the foothills. "Damn it, can't you be a bit more gentle?" Xiao Hua closed his eyes and cursed inwardly. "He directly pulled me out with a rope. If it weren't for my thick skin, wouldn't that pull have injured my tendons and bones? I don't even know how to save people." "Senior brother Zhang, these 7 people are on their last breaths." Seeing the state of the 7 people, a disciple hurriedly said, "We do have some pills in our storage pouches, but there aren't many." "That's not right, Senior brother Zhang, this is the Imperial Thunder Sect's robe. These 7 people are Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples." Another clever disciple discovered, "The patrolling disciples in front of us are from Cool Breeze Valley." Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples? 7 people? Zhang Xian's eyes lit up and hurriedly looked over. When he saw Xiao Hua's face, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. "That's right, it's the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. This guy is Xiao Hua. I recognize these 7 people. They are the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples who fell in the Battle of Mt. Quanjin. They actually didn't die. Quick, don't care about the pills. Quickly give them to them. We must preserve their lives. This is a greater contribution than magic treasures." Yes, this disciple understands. When the disciple who was stingy with the pills heard this, he didn't dare to say anything else. He immediately took out healing pills from his storage pouch and put one into the mouths of Xiao Hua and the others. After everyone had consumed the elixir, Zhang Xian's heart was slightly at ease. He looked around and pointed to the cave that Xiao Hua had previously used. "These 7 people are seriously injured and cannot be moved for the time being. We will first place the 7 people in the cave and leave 1 person to guard it. The others will follow this poor Taoist to search inside." Yes, this disciple understands. The group of disciples then hurriedly threw the 7 people into the cave. That crude force was only slightly inferior to when Xiao Hua threw the 6 people into the stone wall. This is really karma. Xiao Hua was speechless as he enjoyed the treatment of being thrown away. Fortunately, the disciples of the Utopia faction were well-mannered. They placed the 7 people in different places, lying on their backs instead of piling them together. After making arrangements for Xiao Hua and the others, Zhang Xian once again left behind an early-stage Foundation establishment disciple, while the others once again headed towards the Golden Spring Mountain range. After another 3 to 4 days, the spiritual energy explosion at Mount Quanjin finally attracted cultivators and swordsmen. Within a radius of 10 miles around Mount Quanjin, human figures began to appear. At this moment, Zhang Xian and the rest had already arrived near the Golden Spring Mountain range. At the same time, they could also see the huge crater in the Golden Spring Mountain range. Facing such a huge crater, Zhang Xen was even more speechless. He could easily imagine the scene when the array collapsed. That unstoppable ferocity. Naturally, he thought of Xiao Hua, who was lucky enough to survive. Sai, why is there such a big difference between people? This sentence flashed into his mind again. Zhang Xian and the other disciples of the Utopia faction searched the crater in Golden Spring Mountain for a day and found a lot of magic treasures and the remains of magic treasures. When a cultivator scanned the crater with his spiritual sense, Zhang Xian immediately left with his disciples. They had already gained enough. It was not worthwhile to have any more conflicts with others and even lose their lives. When Zhang Xian and the rest returned to the cave, the two people he sent to deliver the message had also returned from the teleportation device. Following closely were a few guards from the Sky Patrol City. They were also shocked that Xiao Hua and the rest were still alive. An hour after Zhang Xian's return, Xiao Hua, Cui Hongshan and the rest also woke up one after another. When he saw Zhang Xian and the rest, Cui Hongshan was stunned and hurriedly said, Where is this? Is the Golden Spring Mountain spiritual stone mine still in the hands of the Taoist faction? Xiao Hua was also stunned. Looking at the somewhat familiar face of Zhang Xian, he hesitated and said, Are you, fellow cultivator Zhang from the Utopia faction? Junior brother Xiao, of course it's me. Zhang Xian looked at Xiao Hua's almost unchanged face and said with a smile, I am Zhang Xian, who participated in the Taiching sect's Feather Deity Conference. After not seeing each other for decades, I look old, but junior brother Xiao is still as youthful as ever. Sai, it's nothing. Xiao Hua waved his hand, looked at Cui Hongshan and asked again, Senior brother Zhang, where is this? Is this the Golden Spring Mountain spiritual stone mine? What happened to me and the rest? Junior brother Xiao. Zhang Xian looked at Xiao Hua, then looked at Cui Hongshan and the rest, who were confused, and said with a smile, This must be Captain Cui Hongshan, right? Cui Hongshan nodded and said, That's me, senior brother Zhang from the Utopia faction. Nice to meet you. It's a long story about Golden Spring Mountain. I won't explain it in detail here. We'll return to the Sky Patrol City now. On the way I'll explain it slowly. Zhang Xian thought for a while and said, Okay. Xiao Hua nodded, but Cui Hongshan frowned and said, Senior brother Zhang, what happened to Golden Spring Mountain? Why are we here? And we just recovered from our injuries? Zhang Xian laughed softly, the Golden Spring Mountain spiritual stone mine no longer exists. As for how brother Cui got injured, I don't know. However, when I saw all of you, your lives were hanging by a thread. Fortunately, although your injuries are serious, they're all on the skin and flesh. Your meridians and dantian are still intact. You'll naturally recover in these few days. Fellow Taoists, you are all lucky. Sai, thinking about some of our friends. As he spoke, Zhang Xian's face paled. Xiao Hua understood and said softly, Senior brother Zhang, senior brother Yang Fangqing, it seems like, junior brother Xiao has met senior brother Yang before, right? Yes, and senior brother He Fang Yuan from Taiching sect, and senior brother Ku Xingxi from Kunlun sect, they're all old friends of mine. Sigh, only senior brother He Fang Yuan was lucky enough to escape from Golden Spring Mountain and has returned to Taiching sect now. Zhang Xen sighed, I only heard about him 5 years ago. I haven't heard about him for the past few years. 5 years ago? Senior brother Zhang, what do you mean? Zhen Minghui was baffled and asked unconsciously. Zhang Xen stood up and said, Let's go. Now that Golden Spring Mountain's formation has unexpectedly exploded, it attracted many cultivators and swordsmen. We should hurry back to patrol Heaven City. Golden Spring Mountain's formation? What's going on? Cui Hongshan was puzzled, but immediately after, his face showed a trace of shock as he looked at Zhen Minghui and said, Senior brother Minghui, the formation that senior brother Zhang mentioned, is it that layer of restriction? Chapter 2376. After exiting the formation, there was no more heaven and earth spiritual chi attacking Xiao Hua's body and meridians. Xiao Hua's body relaxed and with a long roar, he somersaulted in the air. The phoenix celestial body spread its wings and flew along the side of the hurricane. After waiting for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the phoenix celestial body flew to the edge of the hurricane. With a loud and clear cry, the phoenix celestial body spread its 400 zhang wings and carried Xiao Hua out of the hurricane with ease. Outside the hurricane was naturally 1,000 zhang high in the sky, and the wind was biting cold. A thin layer of golden light naturally appeared around Xiao Hua's body, protecting his entire body. Roar, outside the hurricane, the world was vast and the boundless snow was in sight. Xiaohua couldn't help but let out a long roar. The world was so big and everything was under his control. Xiaohua's heart was instantly filled with the feeling of being free and unfettered. Good boy. After flying for a while, Xiaohua withdrew the phoenix celestial body and spread out his divine sense. When he saw that all the living things within 100 li were killed, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. After thinking for a while, he understood the clues and he felt even more lucky. Then Xiaohua looked at the huge pit in the Golden Spring Mountain range, and his mind spun rapidly, thinking of how to explain the reason why he and Cui Hongshan were able to survive. I'm afraid that's the only way. Xiaohua thought for a while and came up with a plan. His body turned in a circle in midair, and with a thunderous roar, he flew towards the west. After flying for a few dozen miles, they arrived at a steep mountain range. At this time there was no snow on the mountain range and the forest was also destroyed. On the bare foot of the mountain there was a small cave in front of them. Xiaohua laughed and pointed with his hand. This is the place. Thus Xiaohua flew into the cave, sat down cross-legged and took out the Buddha Sarira. After that, he pulled Cui Hongshan and the others out of the space, erasing their memories one by one, and even slightly changing some things. After waiting for half an hour, Xiaohua proudly came out of the cave. Then Xiaohua flew in midair and thought for a while. He looked around and even pinched his chin. When his brows relaxed, he grabbed Cui Hongshan from the space again, and hit him with a hand seal. Then, without hesitation, he used his strength to smash Cui Hongshan into the mountain range. Rumble, Cui Hongshan's body smashed into the mountain range and made a huge sound. Light flashed around his body and his body was embedded in the mountain range. He smashed more than 10 zhang. Haha, it's so refreshing. If Cui Hongshan's father, Cui Hongshan will be angry. Xiaohua clapped his hands, and his divine sense swept past Cui Hongshan. He saw that although Cui Hongshan was already heavily injured, it was not enough to take his life. Xiao had to do it. Xiao. Xiaohua was Zhao's Xiao of the Xiao of the same. Finally Xiaohua himself was the same. He screamed in midair and rushed into the mountain range. 7 human-shaped caves were formed at the foot of the mountain. Zhang Xan was a disciple of the Utopia faction in the early stage of the Foundation establishment stage. He was short and had an ordinary appearance. As a cultivator, appearance and figure were secondary. As long as your cultivation was high, who would dare to look down on you? Unfortunately, Zhang Xian's aptitude was just like his figure and appearance. He was too ordinary. When he was cultivating qi, he narrowly passed the Utopia faction's disciple selection and became a cultivator. Now that he had the conditions to cultivate, Zhang Xian was full of energy and wanted to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. However, there were no shortcuts in cultivation. If you didn't have the aptitude, you couldn't do it. Even if you didn't sleep every day and cultivated all the time, you couldn't compare with those with good aptitude. In the Utopia faction, Li Zongbao was a typical example. Zhang Xian joined the Utopia faction with Li Zongbao. However, Li Zongbao easily reached the Foundation establishment stage and even reached the middle stage of the Foundation establishment stage. Zhang Xian was still stuck at the peak of level 12 of the Qi refining stage and couldn't reach the Foundation establishment stage for a long time. Fortunately, Zhang Xian worked hard and earned an opportunity to participate in the Feather Deity Conference. However, the result was not out of his expectations. Although he was ranked in the top 32, he was shocked again in the competition for the extraterrestrial divine object. It turned out that on the Dawn Rain continent, except for Li Zongbao of the Utopia faction, he couldn't compare with Yun Guichong of the Washed Flower sect and Hongxia Fairy. Even Xiaohua of the Imperial Thunder sect, who didn't enter the top 32, was far behind him. Needless to say, he retreated helplessly in the face of Yun Guichong's magic weapon. Needless to say, he was extremely surprised by Hongxia Fairy's betrayal. Needless to say, Yun Guichong and Hongxia Fairy had both reached the peak of the Qi refining stage and only wanted to reach the completion of the Qi refining stage with the help of the soul accumulation talisman. He just remembered that he had seen Xiaohua's amazing strength with his own eyes. He actually took out the great wisdom sword. His heart had been trembling for more than 10 years. How could there be such a big difference between people? This thought, even after he had reached the Foundation establishment stage, it still lingered in his heart. Even when the Great War of Tao cultivators began, he who hadn't broken through the Foundation establishment stage for a long time, was selected to join the expedition together with Yang Fangqing. He still didn't get rid of this thought. However, 5 years ago he suddenly woke up. Yes, there is such a big difference between people. Opportunities are always different. However, no matter what the difference is, no matter what the opportunity is, as long as one is alive, there is a chance. This was because Yang Fangqing, who had been sent to the expedition together with him, had died in the Battle of Mount Quanjing. Not even his corpse was left behind. Thinking of Yang Fangqing, Zhang Exan felt a little sad. Yang Fangqing's experience was very similar to his. The two of them had even participated in the Feather Immortal Conference together. This time, the two of them were together in the expedition. However, Yang Fangqing was more mature than Zhang Exan. He didn't complain as much as Zhang Exan. He just cultivated diligently. After hearing the news of Yang Fangqing's death, the first thing Zhang Exan did was to apply for a mission from the deacon. He was to bring his team of 9 disciples to patrol Mount Quanjin, hoping to find Yang Fangqing's corpse. Of course, patrolling Mount Quanjin wasn't an easy task. Every sect had a chance and even every team had a chance. However, Zhang Exan knew that other than himself, who sincerely wanted to find Yang Fangqing's corpse, most of the other teams were here for the magic treasures in the array. Today was the day that the Utopia faction would replace the Cool Breeze Valley team. Zhang Exan brought his team and set off a few days earlier. Just when they were a few hundred miles away from Mount Quanjin, they encountered the rupture of the array. There was an earth-shattering sound, and there was a strange phenomenon of a hurricane soaring into the sky. Even from a few hundred miles away, there was a pressure of spiritual energy fluctuations. Zhang Exan's first reaction was that there was a problem with the array of Mount Quanjin. He sent 2 of his disciples back to report the news, while he urged the rest of his disciples to follow him and rush towards Mount Quanjin. When Zhang Exan arrived within a few hundred miles of Mount Quanjin, the impact of the explosion of heaven and earth spiritual qi had already passed. Looking at the unimaginable mess on the ground, Zhang Exan was dumbfounded. The stubbornness in his heart was instantly destroyed. There was nothing to say. Even if Yang Fangqing was alive, he wouldn't have been able to escape from the array, not to mention his corpse. Senior Zhang. Look, there's a magic treasure over there. A Foundation Establishment stage disciple didn't think as much as Zhang Exan. He used his spiritual will to scan the area and found a strange fluctuation of spiritual energy. He shouted happily. Oh, indeed. Zhang Exan used his spiritual will to scan the area and understood that the magic treasure in the array was blown here by the explosion of heaven and earth spiritual qi. Hurry. Zhang Exan said anxiously, the array is damaged. I'm afraid there won't be any cultivators or swordsmen within a few hundred miles. We are the first batch to arrive here. These magic treasures are what we want to find. It's also our great contribution. Yes, this disciple understands. The others were overjoyed. Without waiting for Zhang Exan's urging, they hurriedly used their flying techniques and released their spiritual will. They searched the ground inch by inch and began their treasure hunting journey. The magic treasures and flying swords of tens of thousands of cultivators and swordsmen were definitely a terrifying number. Although Xiaohua took a lot, there were still a lot left in the array. However, although there were many things, if the array exploded, the items would be like fried beans. They would scatter everywhere and scatter in the space of a few hundred miles. It really wasn't easy to find them. Zhang Exan and the others searched for more than half a day and only found a dozen magic treasures and flying swords. Of course, they couldn't be compared to Xiaohua. They were already beaming with joy when they saw so many things. As for Zhang Exan, after searching for more than half a day, he only saw magic treasures deeply embedded in the mountain walls. He didn't see any bones or the like. He already knew that it was impossible to find Yang Fangqing's corpse. His thoughts were also extinguished. Senior Yang. It's not that this little brother didn't try his best, but this is really too difficult. I'm afraid that senior brother's corpse has already turned into ashes and scattered between heaven and earth. Even if this little brother saw it, he would be powerless to do anything. Zhang Exan and the other disciples gradually pushed forward, but he still secretly muttered in his heart, of course, if senior brother really has a spirit in the netherworld, tell this little brother where the bones are buried and this little brother will definitely. While Zhang Exan was thinking, his eyes swept across the foothills. On the foothills, there were traces of 7 human figures. Huh? Zhang Exan couldn't help but exclaim, could it be that senior brother Yang's spirit is manifesting? Immediately, he swept the area with his spiritual will and shouted, disciples, quickly, there are people in the foothills. Yes, these people still have a chance to live. The disciples heard Zhang Exan's call and all gathered around. They swept the area with their spiritual will and saw the situation of Xiaohua and the others clearly. How did they get embedded in the stone walls? Xiaohua and the others' Taoist robes were all damaged and their faces were covered. Zhang Exang couldn't see clearly, but he could vaguely see that the 7 people weren't wearing the Taoist robes of the Utopia faction. He couldn't help but feel disappointed. As he spoke, he followed the traces of the 7 people in the stone walls and looked in the direction of Jinquan Mountain. Chapter 2377. These 7 people came from the direction of MT Chuanjin's array. Zhang Exang immediately understood and shouted, "They are the disciples of the patrol team in front of us. Quickly save them." Hearing this, everyone hurriedly took action. Using magic tools and other methods, they pulled Xiaohua and the others out from the foothills. "Damn it, can't they be a little more gentle?" Xiaohua closed his eyes and cursed inwardly. "He directly pulled me out with a rope. If it weren't for my thick skin, I would have been injured by this pull. I don't even know how to save people." "Senior brother Zhang, these 7 people are on their last breaths." Seeing the state of the 7 people, a disciple hurriedly said, "We have some pills in our storage pouches, but there aren't many." "That's not right, senior brother Zhang. This is Imperial Thunder Sect's robe. These 7 people are Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples." Another quick-witted disciple discovered, "The patrolling disciples in front of us are from Cool Breeze Valley." Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples? 7 people? Zhang Exang's eyes lit up and he hurriedly looked over. When he saw Xiaohua's face, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. "That's right, it's Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. This guy is Xiaohua. I recognize these 7 people. They are the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples who fell in the Battle of MT Quanjin. They actually didn't die. Quick, don't care about the pills. Quickly give them to them. We must preserve their lives. This is a greater contribution than magic treasures." Yes, this disciple understands. When the disciple who was stingy with the pills heard this, he didn't dare to say anything else. He immediately took out healing pills from his storage pouch and put one into the mouths of Xiaohua and the others. After everyone had taken the pills, Zhang Exang's heart was slightly relieved. He looked around and pointed to the cave that Xiaohua had used before and said, "These 7 people are seriously injured and can't be moved for the time being. We will first put them in the cave and leave one person to guard it. The others will follow I to search inside." Yes, this disciple understands. The group of disciples then hurriedly threw the 7 people into the cave. That crude force was only slightly inferior to when Xiaohua threw the 6 people into the stone wall. This is really karma. Xiaohua was speechless as he enjoyed the treatment of being thrown away. Fortunately, the disciples of the Utopia faction were well-mannered. They placed the 7 people in different places, lying on their backs instead of piling them together. After making arrangements for Xiaohua and the others, Zhang Exang once again left behind an early-stage Foundation establishment disciple, while the others once again headed towards the Golden Spring Mountain range. After another 3 to 4 days, the spiritual energy explosion at Mount Quanjin finally attracted cultivators and swordsmen. Within a radius of 10 miles around Mount Quanjin, human figures began to appear. At this moment, Zhang Exang and the rest had already arrived near the Golden Spring Mountain range. At the same time, they could also see the huge crater in the Golden Spring Mountain range. Facing such a huge crater, Zhang Exang was even more speechless. He could easily imagine the scene when the array collapsed. That unstoppable ferocity. Naturally, he thought of Xiaohua, who was lucky enough to survive. "Sai, why is there such a big difference between people?" This sentence flashed into his mind again. Zhang Exang and the other disciples of the Utopia faction searched the crater in Golden Spring Mountain for a day and found a lot of magic treasures and the remains of magic treasures. When a cultivator's divine thought swept across the crater, Zhang Exang immediately left with the disciples vigilantly. They had already gained enough. It was not worthwhile to have any more conflicts with others and even lose their lives. When Zhang Exang and the rest returned to the cave, the 2 people he sent to deliver the message had also returned from the teleportation device. Following closely behind were a few guards from the Sky Patrol City. They were also shocked that Xiaohua and the rest were still alive. An hour after Zhang Exang returned, Xiaohua, Cui Hongshan and the rest also woke up one after another. When he saw Zhang Exang and the rest, Cui Hongshan was stunned and hurriedly said, Where is this? Is the Golden Spring Mountain spiritual stone mine still in the hands of the Taoist faction?" Xiaohua was also stunned. Looking at the somewhat familiar face of Zhang Exang, he hesitated and said, "Are you fellow cultivator Zhang from the Utopia faction? Hehe, junior brother Xiao, of course it's me. Zhang Xen looked at Xiao Hua's almost unchanged face and said with a smile, I am Zhang Xen, who participated in the Taiching sect's Feather Deity Conference. After not seeing each other for decades, I look old, but junior brother Xiao is still as youthful as ever. Sai, it's nothing. Xiao Hua waved his hand, looked at Cui Hongshan and asked again, Senior brother Zhang, where is this? Is this the Golden Spring Mountain spiritual stone mine? What happened to me and the rest? Hehe, junior brother Xiao. Zhang Xen looked at Xiao Hua, then looked at Cui Hongshan and the rest, who were confused, and said with a smile, This must be Captain Cui Hongshan, right? Cui Hongshan nodded and said, That's me, senior brother Zhang from the Utopia faction. Nice to meet you. It's a long story about Golden Spring Mountain. I won't explain it in detail here. We'll return to the Sky Patrol City now. On the way I'll explain it slowly. Zhang Xen thought for a while and said, Okay. Xiao Hua nodded, but Cui Hongshan frowned and said, Senior brother Zhang, what happened to Golden Spring Mountain? Why are we here? And we just recovered from our injuries? Hehe, Zhang Xen laughed softly, the Golden Spring Mountain spiritual stone mine no longer exists. As for how brother Cui got injured, I don't know. However, when I saw all of you, your lives were hanging by a thread. Fortunately, although your injuries are serious, they're all on the skin and flesh. Your meridians and dantian are still intact. You'll naturally recover in these few days. Fellow Taoists, you are all lucky. Sai, thinking about some of our friends. As he spoke, Zhang Xian's face paled. Xiao Hua understood and said softly, Senior brother Zhang, senior brother Yang Fangqing, it seems like, junior brother Xiao has met senior brother Yang before, right? Yes, and senior brother He Fang Yuan from Taiching sect, and senior brother Ku Xingxi from Kunlun sect, they're all old friends of mine. Sigh, only senior brother He Fang Yuan was lucky enough to escape from Golden Spring Mountain and has returned to Taiching sect now. Zhang Xen sighed, I only heard about him 5 years ago. I haven't heard about him for the past few years. 5 years ago? Senior brother Zhang, what do you mean? Zhen Minghui was baffled and asked unconsciously. Ah. Zhang Xen stood up and said, Let's go. Now that Golden Spring Mountain's formation has unexpectedly exploded, it attracted many cultivators and swordsmen. We should hurry back to Sentry City. Golden Spring Mountain's formation? What's going on? Cui Hongshan was puzzled. But immediately, his face showed a trace of shock as he looked at Zhen Minghui. Senior brother Minghui, the formation that senior brother Zhang mentioned, is it that layer of restriction? It should be. Zhen Minghui raised his head and looked at Xiao Hua. Junior brother Xiao, what do you think? Sai, it should be. Xiao Hua's face was also extremely confused. It seems that at that time, there was a sword cultivator chasing after us, and an incomparably huge force pushed us towards the restriction. Little brother's vision turned black and I don't know anything. Zhenhua, what about you? Xiao Hua turned around and asked Zhenhua. Zhenhua was stunned and nodded hurriedly like a chick pecking at rice. Yes. I also remember this. My vision turned black. When I opened my eyes, I was in the cave and saw my fellow cultivators from the Utopia faction. I guess this is the reason why senior brother Zhang said we were unconscious for 5 years? Xiao Hua's face was full of realization. What? We were unconscious for 5 years? At this time, Cui Hongshan, Zhen Minghui and the rest suddenly understood. Let's talk about it on the way. At this time they had already flown out of the cave. Zhang Xian's divine thoughts swept over them and urged them. Golden Spring Mountain was far from Sentry City. In the past 5 years the war had been in a stalemate, and the country of Xi had advanced a lot. Hence, there were more sword cultivators near Golden Spring Mountain. At this time, the cultivators from Sentry City had not arrived, but the sword cultivators had arrived first. Xiao Hua and the rest had recovered from their injuries, but the injuries on their meridians could not be healed quickly. They could not fly fast, so they could only be carried by the disciples of the Utopia faction. After flying for a day in the direction of Sentry City, they did not fly too far. And on this day Cui Hongshan and the rest thoroughly understood everything that had happened at Quanjin Mountain. After hearing about the tragic battle at Golden Spring Mountain, Cui Hongshan, who was in the middle of it, could not help but change his expression. They were in the restrictive spell at that time and did not know about the killing outside. At this time when they heard about it they could not help but have goosebumps and feel lucky. Naturally Zhang Xan and the rest also knew why Cui Hongshan and the rest could survive. It was because they had set up a defense in the spiritual stone mine and were responsible for attacking the swordsmen who went deep into the spiritual stone mine. When the spell was activated, they were being chased by the swordsmen and just happened to escape to the edge of the spell. That was because the spell had not been fully formed. With the help of the spiritual howl, they were embedded in the edge of the spell. It was also because of this that they escaped the attack of the spiritual howl and escaped with their lives. When the spell collapsed, they were thrown out of the spell of Golden Spring Mountain along with the spiritual howl and shot straight into the foothills of the mountain. Oh my God! The 9 people of the Utopia faction were fascinated by the story. This was simply the legendary fortune. This was something that could not be encountered even in a million years. What a coincidence! How could they have encountered it? However, they had no choice but to believe it. If they did not manage to gather all the swordsmen together, how could they, who were only in the foundation establishment stage, survive the spiritual howl? That was the fall of 30 Golden Core stage swordsmen. Seeing Cui Hongshan and the rest's solemn expressions, as well as their expressions of relief and fear, Xiaohua heaved a long sigh of relief. Damn it, if even these words cannot be deceived, then I have no other way. Xiaohua thought to himself. Oh yes, I have a small matter to ask. Cui Hongshan thought for a moment and asked softly. Please ask, my friend Cui. Zhang Xian was rather courteous. He was clear that although Cui Hongshan did not contribute in the battle at Golden Spring Mountain, these 7 people were still survivors and must be heavily rewarded. How are the other 3 people from the Imperial Thunder sect doing? Cui Hongshan looked at Zhang Xian carefully, afraid that there would be some bad news. To be continued. Chapter 2378. Oh, about that. Zhang Xian said with a smile. In the Battle of Golden Spring Mountain, there were 17 survivors from my sect. Among them were 3 female cultivators from the Imperial Thunder sect. They were also rewarded. As for what happened in these 5 years, I don't know. Thank you, fellow cultivator Zhang. Cui Hongshan was overjoyed. But then, his face showed a trace of loneliness. He looked up at the sky and said, Alas, 5 years passed in a flash. My glory is like a song. Damn it, the disciples of a cultivation family are so arrogant. Xiaohua sneered disdainfully. It's a pity that 5 years are gone for no reason. Cui Hongshan flew with the disciples of the utmost happiness faction. He didn't use his magic power. At this moment he sighed in his heart and endured the pain. However, as soon as he started to use the heart technique, he was stunned. Seeing the astonishment on Cui Hongshan's face as he stopped his cocky fart, Xiaohua was still bewildered. Without waiting for him to carefully ponder over it, Zhenhua and Baisugu, who were behind him, cried out in alarm, Martial Uncle Xiao Jr. Jr. is about to build his foundation. Building his foundation? Building his foundation now? Xiaohua was also taken aback. He hurriedly swept his divine sense over. Wasn't that the case? Zhenhua and Baisugu's bodies were flashing with brilliance. Their divine senses were in a state of being released, and the pressure of the foundation establishment stage was gradually emerging. Wasn't this the state of foundation establishment? Why are you building your foundation here? Zhang Xian was shocked. Building one's foundation must attract the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. If it was a normal day, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, they were in the vicinity of Golden Spring Mountain, which was very sensitive. It would definitely attract the attention of cultivators and swordsmen. If it was cultivators, they would leave. But how could swordsmen let you build your foundation safely? Do you want to use the soul accumulation talisman? Xiaohua knew it was inappropriate and hurriedly asked. Zhenhua and Baisugu looked at each other. Their eyes were full of bitterness. They had cultivated bitterly for more than 10 years and finally built their foundation. If they used the soul accumulation talisman, who knew if they couldn't build their foundation? They couldn't be compared with those disciples with heavenly aptitudes. However, if they didn't use the soul accumulation talisman, they understood the danger of this place from Zhang Xian's tone. Forget it. Zhenhua smiled bitterly. I am willing to use the soul accumulation talisman. Disciple 2. Baisugu also cupped his fists and said. Is that so? Xiaohua clapped his hands and took out 2 accumulating spirit talismans. Are you willing to do this? We. Zhenhua and Baisugu gritted their teeth and said, We are willing to use the soul accumulation talisman. Ah. Xiaohua laughed heartily. He clapped his hands and put the accumulating spirit talisman into his bag. He laughed and said, Since you don't want to use it, then don't use it. You don't have to force it. With your martial uncle Xiao overseeing this place, Who can stop the two of you from reaching foundation establishment? Go. As Xiaohua spoke, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the two by their necks. His figure flew up and flew toward two mountain peaks not too far away. Xiaohua. Zhang Xan called out from behind, let them use the accumulating spirit talisman. If they attract sword cultivators, we won't be able to keep our lives. Senior Martial Brother Zhang, if you're scared, feel free to leave. Xiaohua joked as he flew. I have a junior who wants to build his foundation, how can I not look after him? Whoever dares to disturb the foundation establishment of my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples, I'll kill whoever comes, kill whoever comes. Ah. Alas, let's go. How could Zhang Xan leave? With a wave of his hand, the disciples of the Utopia faction led Cui Hongshan and the others to chase after Xiaohua. The disciples of the Utopia faction were a little embarrassed. They felt that Xiaohua was too accommodating to Zhenhua and Baisugu. After all, they still had two accumulating spirit talismans. It wouldn't be too late for them to build their foundation after flying for a few days and greeting the cultivators of the Sky Patrol City. Now that they were building their foundation here, it was definitely a big bait. If they didn't attract sword cultivators, it would be absolutely impossible. At the thought of these two absolutes, the disciples of the Utopia faction gritted their teeth in hatred. Instead of accompanying two chi-refining disciples to build their foundation here and meeting sword cultivators, it would be better to go to Mount Quanjin to pick up more magic weapons and snatch more magic weapons from sword cultivators. Although Xiaohua suppressed his flying speed, he was still faster than the others. By the time Zhang Xian and the others arrived at the mountain peak, Xiaohua had already made arrangements for Zhenhua. He then brought Baisu Valley to another mountain peak. Junior brother Xiao, I'll accompany you to look after this disciple. How about letting the other disciples and junior brother Cui go over there to look after the other disciples? Zhang Xan saw that Xiaohua could fly so fast after being injured, and he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. He only knew that Xiaohua had infinite strength. That's good. Xiaohua looked at Zhenhua, who was only 200 feet away from him, and nodded. You and the others take. Zhang Xan was just about to instruct when Xiaohua smiled and said, how about this, fellow cultivator Cui and the others? Stay here and ask the disciples of the Utopia faction to look after them. Thank you. Okay. I actually failed to build my foundation establishment stage for the first time, and it took me a long time to build my foundation establishment stage for the second time. Therefore, when I saw these two juniors in a hurry to build their foundation establishment stage, I empathized with them and did my best to help them build their foundation establishment stage. Yes, Zhang Xan nodded, but he still said, it's just that these two juniors' luck is a bit bad. This is not a good place, and there are many disciples who were building their foundation establishment stage who died in the hands of sword cultivators. It's better for us to be careful. Yes, I understand. Actually, we should have put the two of them together. Zhang Xan narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhenhua in the distance and the disciples of the Utopia faction sitting cross-legged next to him. If we separated them, they wouldn't affect each other, but if there were swordsmen attacking, it would be a bit difficult. Yes, I know. Xiaohua still didn't express his opinion. Seeing that Xiaohua had said so, Zhang Xan didn't say anything more. He released his divine thought and carefully took precautions. Zhenhua and Baisugu suddenly building their foundation establishment stage made Xiaohua very surprised. After all, they had been in a coma for the past 5 years. What made him even more puzzled was that Cui Hongshan, Zhen Minghui, Su Qing and Qiu Su also wanted to interfere. They actually sat there and started to circulate their heart sutras slowly. Damn it, can't they circulate their heart sutras? Why do they have to do it here? Isn't this snatching the spiritual qi from the foundation establishment stage disciples? Xiaohua despised Cui Hongshan, even though there were 4 foundation establishment stage cultivators here and the 4 of them only carefully absorbed a small amount of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Zhenhua and Baisugu's foundation establishment stage phenomenon indeed attracted the attention of the crowd. Some cultivators rushed over happily. When they scanned with their divine thought, they found out that it was 2 juniors building their foundation establishment stage. They were disappointed but also helpless. Those with good self-restraint turned around and left. Those with bad self-restraint cursed a few words in the air and even spat. Of course, they wouldn't interfere with the 2's foundation establishment stage. After all, they were all sword cultivators of the Dao faction. They still understood this principle. If the cultivators came, would the swordsmen be far away? Immediately, several swordsmen came together. Of course, When they saw that the two disciples building their foundation establishment stage were guarded by several foundation establishment stage cultivators, although they had malicious intentions, they also resentfully turned around and left. Instead of wasting time here, it would be better to quickly find a flying sword. Chapter 2379. Unfortunately, after the time it took to finish a meal, Zhenhua and Baisu Valley's good luck came to an end. From the direction of Quanjin Mountain, there were about 23rd grade swordsmen with their swords drawn. Their faces were filled with panic as they hurriedly flew over. While flying, they kept looking behind them. When one of them saw the phenomenon of Zhenhua and Baisu Valley's foundation building, he was overjoyed and hurriedly transmitted his voice to the other swordsmen. Those 20 swordsmen excitedly flew over. Not good. When these swordsmen flew closer, Zhang Xan noticed and hurriedly shouted, "Junior brother Cui, have you all adjusted your breath? There are 20 swordsmen coming over." Xiaohua had already seen them and didn't care at all. Seeing Zhang Xian's panic, he smiled and said, "No need to delay these people's cultivation. It's rare for them to be so hardworking. Senior brother Zhang, you go over there and stay with the fellow cultivators from the Utopia faction." Zhang Xian was somewhat hesitant. Xiaohua was still smiling. "Senior brother Zhang, it's better to stay with your own disciples. Otherwise, if there's any mishap, you won't be able to explain it to the assembly hall." "All right." Zhang Xian knew that Xiaohua's words were reasonable and said in a low voice, "If junior brother Xiao feels that something is wrong, quickly bring the disciples over. With us together we won't be afraid of them." "I know." Xiaohua nodded. After Zhang Xian flew over, Xiaohua turned to look at the place where the swordsman flew. It was less than 3 miles away. At this time, Cui Hongshan stood up from the ground and frowned. 20 swordsmen, it's a bit tricky. And you'd better cultivate diligently." Xiaohua said sarcastically, "There's someone building foundation here, the spiritual energy here is very rich." "You." Cui Hongshan didn't expect Xiaohua to look at him like this and was slightly angry. However, he didn't bother to explain to Xiaohua. "Hehe, junior brother Xiao." Zhen Minghui also stood up and said happily, "I'm afraid you've misunderstood Captain Cui." "What did I misunderstand?" Xiaohua naturally wouldn't admit it. "Hehe, I'll let junior brother Xiao know." Zhen Minghui said in a low voice, "I just checked my meridians and heart technique. I'm not talented. Although I don't have any impression of these 5 years, but these 5 years are worth 10 years of hard cultivation." "What?" Xiaohua was extremely surprised. He knocked out the 6 of them and threw them into the space. He didn't expect that as soon as they came out, 2 of them were about to enter the foundation establishment realm and 4 of them had made great progress in their cultivation. What had his space become? On the other side, Su Qing and Qiu Su stood up as well. Similarly, their faces lit up with joy. They smiled and said, "That's right, we've also checked. Our cultivation has indeed improved. We know that if we cultivate diligently for a few years or even less than a year, we will be able to step into the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage." "You too?" Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and looked at Cui Hongshan. "I don't know." Cui Hongshan replied indifferently. "Whether or not it is love." Xiaohua curled his lips. "This Xiao is too lazy to care." "What about you? Junior brother Xiao?" Su Qing blinked and asked, "Don't tell me you didn't make any progress?" "Me? Of course I do." Xiaohua also couldn't deny it. Then he rolled his eyes and said with a profound look, "Just now this Xiao thought about it. I thought it was just this Xiao's own situation and didn't dare to ask you. I reckon it might be because we were inside the restriction. Although that spiritual howl couldn't attack us, but the spiritual chi of heaven and earth could also seep into the restriction of the Great Formation. Although we were unconscious, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth still entered our meridians and pushed our cultivation." That's right, that's right." Fear appeared on Zhen Minghui's face. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth could actually rush into a person's meridians and cause a swordsman's body to explode. It could definitely pass through the restriction of the formation and enter our meridians. Fortunately, there was a great formation that blocked the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, otherwise we would have already turned into ashes. Seeing that Zhen Minghui was able to lie so perfectly, Xiaohua felt proud in his heart. While everyone was talking, the 20 sword cultivators had already flown to the center of the mountain with bared fangs and brandished claws. They scanned with their divine senses and stopped again. Their faces were filled with shame and anger, knowing that they had pounced on empty air. But immediately, these sword cultivators discussed a little and with a sinister smile on their faces, They all pounced towards Xiaohua's side. After all, the number of people on Xiaohua's side was small. Can you still face the enemy? Xiaohua turned his head and asked, if you can't, then just stay here. Humph, our meridians are only slightly torn, it's nothing. Why can't we face the enemy? Cui Hongxin knew Xiaohua's ability, but now that his cultivation had improved greatly, his heart was jumping with joy. He didn't want Xiaohua to monopolize the limelight. Alright then, this Xiao won't stop you. Xiaohua stretched and said, however, this Xiao will need the time to drink a cup of tea to kill these sword cultivators. During this time, I won't have time to take care of you. Good boy, only the time to drink a cup of tea. Su Qing secretly stuck out her tongue. I know. We are not 3-year-old children. Cui Hongxin secretly laughed at Xiaohua showing off. Alright. At this time, those sword cultivators were less than 100 feet away from Xiaohua and the others. Chapter 2380. Just as Zhang Xan was pondering whether he should bring the disciples over to rescue them, Xiaohua's cloud-suppressing seal appeared. Zhang Xan had heard of this cloud-suppressing seal before and knew that it was a powerful magic treasure that Xiaohua had obtained by chance during the Feather Immortal Assembly. However, seeing that the cloud-suppressing seal did not have much of a magic treasure's power, he thought that Xiaohua was barely able to activate it. He was extremely anxious in his heart. Before he could call out to the other disciples, his figure flew up, wanting to rush to the rescue. But at this moment he discovered something strange because the dozen flying swords that were flying towards Baisu Valley had actually changed their trajectory, and were rushing towards the cloud-suppressing seal. Just as he was pondering whether the flying swords were purposely blocked by the cloud-suppressing seal, an unforgettable scene appeared. Xiaohua slapped his hand and a half-scissor-like magic treasure fragment suddenly appeared in his hand. Under the urging of his magic power, it emitted a faint golden light. Then the magic treasure transformed into a flood dragon and rushed towards the sword cultivators. In the blink of an eye, it rushed to the front of a 4th-grade sword cultivator. The flood dragon slightly swung its tail and swept towards the sword cultivator's neck. The sword cultivator's neck was immediately covered by a sword radiance as if to block it. However, in just an instant the sword radiance was annihilated. The flood dragon's tail swept past the sword cultivator and rushed towards another 3rd-grade sword cultivator behind the sword cultivator. Zhang Xan was stunned. He actually did not see clearly whether the flood dragon killed the sword cultivator or not. The 4th-grade sword cultivator, the one whose attack was said to be comparable to the late stage of Foundation establishment, screamed miserably as he fell from the sky. Even the sword cultivator's neck did not have a scar. Only when he fell a few feet did a red line appear. Zhang Xan only had time to cry out in shock. The soaring dragon scissors flashed through the sword cultivators at an incomparably fast speed, and 4 swordsmen fell from the sky. This. Zhang Xan's figure stopped in the air, and his face showed bitterness. I knew it, this Xiaohua is definitely not an ordinary person. Zhang Xan thought to himself, back then, why is there such a big difference between people? However, just this difference was not enough to make him unable to forget it for the rest of his life. Just as Zhang Xan saw the 4 swordsmen being killed by Xiaohua, the other swordsmen had already sensed the power of Xiaohua's soaring dragon scissors. Many swordsmen immediately gave up on attacking Baisu Gu and formed sword seals in their hands. The dozens of flying swords transformed into all kinds of rainbow lights that broke through the confinement of the suppressing cloud seal. They surrounded Xiaohua from all directions and stabbed towards Xiaohua. Hiss, Zhang Xan's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the same as before. This was the combined attack of more than 10 Foundation establishment swordsmen. Who would have thought that Xiaohua didn't care at all? He urged the transcendence energy in his hand and the soaring dragon shears once again reaped the life of another swordsman. At the same time, the flying sword had already pierced about 3 meters into Xiaohua's body. It seemed that the flying sword was about to pierce through his heart. With a buzzing sound that sounded like thousands of mosquitoes, the previously inconspicuous cloud-suppressing seal suddenly displayed its might. In an instant, it expanded to over 30 meters in size, and smashed towards the dozen or so sword cultivators at a speed that was several times faster than before. Another incomparably valiant confinement force enveloped these sword cultivators. Fall, Xiaohua softly rebuked 3 times in a row. 3 streaks of bronze clouds fell from the cloud-suppressing seal, rapidly enveloping the dozen or so sword cultivators. And just as Xiaohua was chanting an incantation, his figure suddenly swayed. With lightning speed, he broke away from the attack range of the dozen or so flying swords. The flying sword closest to him practically brushed past his ear as it flew away. Fall. Xiaohua's expression didn't change in the slightest. He pointed his hand towards the cloud-suppressing seal. The cloud-suppressing seal that was always half a beat slower now smashed down like a boulder. With a boom, it simultaneously smashed into the bodies of the dozen or so sword cultivators that were already confined by the cloud-suppressing seal in midair. The sword cultivators' protective sword auras flickered extremely brightly, but they still couldn't compare to the brilliance of the cloud-suppressing seal. With just one touch, the dozen or so sword cultivators around the fourth grade were all smashed into meat paste, falling from midair. At this moment, Xiaohua seemed to be even busier than before. With a wave of his hand, the dozen or so flying swords that had just flown past him fell into his hand. With a wave of his hand, he stored them into his space. Immediately after, he didn't stop to rest. Like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, he flew into midair and also collected the storage pouches of the dozen or so sword cultivators. Only then did he clap his hands and return once again. And at this time, the sword cultivators that were preparing to kill Cui Hongshan and the other three had just begun to exchange blows with Cui Hongshan and the others. Zhang Xan was really dumbstruck. His body swayed and he nearly fell from midair. This is a sword cultivator whose strength is comparable to that of the Foundation establishment stage. This is at least 20 cultivators in the late stage of the Foundation establishment stage. How could he kill them so easily? Zhang Xian was somewhat confused. He very naturally turned his head to look at the other disciples of the Utmost Happiness faction. Obviously, those disciples were also standing on the foot of the mountain, allowing the mountain wind to blow their lapels up. It was as if Xiaohua had set off a huge wave in their hearts. I remember that year Xiaohua hadn't entered the top 32, right? It seems that year when he entered the arena, he lost to his senior sister from the same sect. It seems that his cultivation at that time wasn't as strong as I. All kinds of thoughts came one after another, like a wild horse raising its wild hooves, trampling on Zhang Xian's head until it was muddled. 2 magic treasures. Suddenly Zhang Xian seemed to understand something. Xiaohua actually controlled 2 magic treasures, and these 2 magic treasures were both powerful. One attracted the sword cultivator's attention, the other killed the sword cultivator. Alas, even if I have 2 magic treasures, how can I use them? Definitely. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up again. Of these 2 magic treasures, there must be something strange about one of them. Letting Zhang Xian make wild guesses, Xiaohua waved his hand, and the soaring dragon scissors disappeared into his hand. The cloud-suppressing seal made a slight rumbling sound, and flew to Cui Hongshan and the others' side. Cui Hongshan and Zhen Minghui's magic power had indeed improved greatly. The thunder beads and other magic treasures in their hands were even more powerful than before. On the other hand, the 4 swordsmen, although they were also about the 3rd grade of the drawing sword stage, and their strength was comparable to the middle stage of the Foundation establishment stage, seeing nearly 20 swordsmen killed by Xiaohua in one move, their hearts had long been trembling. While fighting Cui Hongshan and the others, they still stole glances at Xiaohua, fearing that this killing god would be unhappy and take out his magic treasures to take their lives. After fighting for half a cup of tea's time, seeing that he could neither win nor lose, a swordsman simply steeled his heart, merged his body with his sword, and urged his sword origin to fly in the opposite direction of Xiaohua. Cui Hongshan was precisely this cultivator's opponent. He also chased after him with all his might for more than 10 zhang, but the swordsman was so fast that he had already escaped far away. This is really a blessing from heaven. Seeing this, the other 3 swordsmen were wild with joy. They were even happier than when they picked up the flying swords of the illusory swordsmen at Mount Quanjin. And of course they also had to let those flying swords slip through Xiaohua's fingers. The 3 swordsmen turned around, each looking for a direction to escape with extreme speed. Zhen Minghui and the others also chased for a few zhang before stopping. After all, there was still a gap and it was impossible for them to catch up with those swordsmen. Junior brother Xiao, your cultivation is really beyond my expectations. Zhang Xan flew over with a smile on his face and cupped his hands. With Xiaohua's cultivation he should be at least in the late stage of the Foundation establishment stage, so he couldn't not be respectful. Where? Xiaohua pointed at the cloud-suppressing seal and said, "This little one's magic treasure is very powerful. If senior brother Zhang had this magic treasure, it would also be possible." Immediately after he added, "Moreover, it seems that after escaping from the great array of Mount Quanjin, this little one's cultivation has made great progress. Just now this little one was also a little surprised. Is that so? There's such a thing? Zhang Xian was slightly stunned. This was simply dog shit luck. After being in a coma for 5 years, not only did he become the hero of the Battle of Mount Quanjin, his cultivation also increased greatly. Who wouldn't be jealous after hearing this? And it's exactly so. Xiaohua smiled and released his pressure. And this pressure was already close to the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. Of course. Xiaohua immediately retracted his pressure, but Zhang Xian could clearly sense that he was about to enter the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. He couldn't help but feel bitter in his mouth and cupped his hands and said, "Congratulations, junior brother Xiao." Aha, this Xiao's few senior brothers are also the same. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. And congratulations, Captain Chui. Zhang Xian turned to congratulate Chui Hongshan and the others. If you're lying. Chui Hongshan despised Xiaohua in his heart. You didn't even kill the sword cultivator that escaped from this daddy's subordinates. This is clearly cutting off this daddy's face. However, he could only smile and return the greeting with a bow, saying, I was lucky. After another hour, Zhenhua and Baisu Gu's foundation establishment stage finally came to an end. Those blind sword cultivators finally didn't come looking for trouble. However, Xiaohua was a little unhappy and muttered to himself, damn it, with such a big foundation establishment stage movement, how could no one come to deliver a storage pouch? You really made this daddy worry for nothing. Seeing that Zhenhua and Baisu Gu had retracted their divine wills, the pressure of the early foundation establishment stage also gradually receded. The surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth also gradually dissipated. At this moment the sky also darkened. Above the horizon the stars were shining brightly, each guarding a corner of the horizon, decorating the night sky. The twinkling starlight was like everyone's unconcealable joy. Congratulations, junior brother Bai. Xiaohua looked at Baisu Gu with a smile and said. Baisu Gu couldn't hide the joy on his face. He bit his lips slightly and bowed, I dare not. In front of Uncle Xiao, I'll always be a junior. If Uncle Xiao didn't show off your invincible power just now, how could I build my foundation establishment stage? Junior thanks Martial Uncle Xiao. Aha, there's no need. You still have to thank the senior brothers who built their foundation establishment stage. Since you've built your foundation establishment stage, you have to leave the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect and return to the Imperial Thunder Sect. This battle's life and death has nothing to do with you. Xiaohua laughed. Next I'll send you back to Sky Patrol City safely, and everything will be fine. Yes, I understand. I'll remember Uncle Zhao's great kindness in my heart. Baisu Gu said respectfully, then turned to thank Chui Hongshan and the others. At this moment, Zhenhua also flew over and kowtowed to thank him. The disciples of the Utopia faction stood slightly further away, their eyes filled with respect, and there was no longer the previous neglect and dissatisfaction. Chapter 2381. When Zhenhua and Baisu Gu finished thanking Xiaohua, Xiaohua took out the storage bags of more than 10 sword cultivators. He took out less than half of the items, including 10 flying swords of average quality, and handed them to Zhen Minghui and said, These are for everyone, you can distribute them. Zhenhua and Baisu Gu should take a little more, after all, they won't have a chance in the future. Yes, I know. Zhen Minghui understood Xiaohua's meaning and divided the items into more than 10 portions. Not only did the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect get one, but also the disciples of the Utopia faction. I'm sorry? Zhang Xian was obviously surprised. After all, these items were the work of Xiaohua, who killed the sword cultivators single-handedly. It was reasonable to say that they belonged to him, so he didn't have to distribute them. Haha, senior brother Zhang, please take them. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, This is the rule of the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect. It was set before we entered the Sky Patrol City, so I can't disobey it. If this guy still cares about the rules. Chui Hongshan muttered in his heart. He didn't want to take them, but after hearing Xiaohua's words, he took out his storage bag and put the items in it. Then, it would be impolite of me to refuse. Zhang Xian looked at the several eager disciples beside him and accepted them with a smile. The disciples beside him were also delighted. They took the items and the flying swords and put them in their storage bags. Although they had a lot of magic weapons and flying swords in their storage bags, they had to be handed over. If they were discovered by the conference hall, it would be a big crime. What Xiaohua took out was less than half of the items in the storage bags. It was a lot for each disciple. How could they not be happy? Should we go back now? Or rest for the night? Zhang Exan looked at the night sky and asked Xiaohua's opinion. Xiaohua looked at Cui Hongshan, who was looking at the bright moonlight, and said with a smile, "Let's hurry back to the Sky Patrol City. The sooner we get back, the sooner I can rest assured." "Alright, that's what I'm thinking too." Zhang Exan naturally agreed. Then, the Utopia faction and the Thunder Control faction set off for the Sky Patrol City in a group of more than 10 people. After flying for several hours, they saw the city guards of the Sky Patrol City and the Taoist sect cultivators sent by the conference hall. They were naturally extremely surprised that Xiaohua and the others were still alive. However, their mission this time was to snatch the magic treasures and flying swords, so they only hurriedly saw them and continued on their way. Just like the few Sky Patrol city guards that Zhang Xian had found earlier, they were in a hurry. Seeing that dawn was about to break in the east, a wisp of light emerged from the horizon. Everyone flew to a dangerous place. The winds here were biting cold and the foothills were steep. From time to time, a foul stench would drift into their noses from afar. Even though everyone was flying high up in the air, they still frowned. Suddenly Xiaohua, who was flying in the middle, frowned and said urgently, "Stop." "Junior brother Xiao, did you find something wrong?" Zhang Exan, who was standing next to him, stopped the disciples of the Utopia faction flying in front of him immediately. Nothing, it seems like someone is here to deliver the storage bag again." Xiaohua squinted his eyes and looked at the foothills a few miles ahead. The foothills were covered in snow and were very high, almost under everyone's feet. "There are swordsmen ambushing us." Zhang Exan raised his eyebrows and suddenly realized something. He said hurriedly, "These swordsmen have learned to be cunning and often set up ambushes on the path that we cultivators must pass through. Many cultivators have fallen into their trap. These swordsmen probably know that the cultivators of the Sky Patrol City are heading to Mount Quanjin, so they set up an ambush here. Previously there were too many cultivators, so they didn't dare to attack. If we go over, I'm afraid we'll be attacked. How many swordsmen are there? Should we take a detour?" Zhen Minghui released his divine thought and looked around. He couldn't find anything strange, so he asked in a low voice. Why should we take a detour?" Xiaohua rubbed his hands and said, "You wait here for a while, I'll be back soon." "Junior brother Xiao?" Zhang Exan said, "According to what I know, the swordsmen who set up the ambush range from dozens to hundreds. They're all used to working together and there are even sword formations. Junior brother is brave, but there's no need to take the risk for those storage bags." "Hundreds? It's only hundreds. This guy has sent thousands of swordsmen in and out, so why would he be afraid of this?" Cui Hongshan secretly curled his lips, knowing that Xiaohua would definitely go. Sure enough, Xiaohua smiled and said, it's okay. I'll go take a look. If it really doesn't work, it's not too late to escape." "Alright." Seeing that Cui Hongshan and the rest didn't stop him, Zhang Exan felt strange and said, "We'll go too. If we're too far away, we won't be able to save each other in time if something happens." "Good." Xiaohua thought about it and agreed. He waved his hand and said, "All of you follow behind this Xiao. Don't go more than 10 feet. Then Xiaohua took the lead and flew forward unhurriedly. He even stopped as he flew, and his divine sense swept over the foothills again and again, as if he was really scouting the way. When Xiaohua flew to the front of a foothill, he stopped and didn't fly forward anymore. Instead, he slapped his hand and took out the cloud-suppressing seal, which buzzed and protected himself. Then he moved forward with ease. However, Xiaohua had only flown a few feet when the cloud-suppressing seal suddenly smashed into the foothill about 1 zhang behind him. On the foothill, a thick layer of snow covered a few pine trees. "Haha, you still want to play this game with me?" Xiaohua laughed and the cloud-suppressing seal suddenly enlarged to the size of several zhang. With a loud rumble, the cloud-suppressing seal smashed into the pine tree. Under the yellow light, all the illusions were destroyed. A pale white light flickered, revealing more than 10 flying swords in a disorderly fashion. Under the flying swords, there were dozens of 4th or 5th grade swordsmen. The pitiful dozen or so sword shio who wanted to wait for Zhang Exan, Cui Hongshan and the others to fall into the ambush before attacking, now had a pale golden color on their faces. They were all lying crookedly on the foot of the mountain. Their gazes were fixed on Cui Hongshan and the others. They had already let go of Xiaohua, who was carefully exploring the path. But they didn't expect that Xiaohua would actually turn around and throw out that inconspicuous magic weapon. That inconspicuous magic weapon was just as unexpected as Xiaohua's. It was unimaginably heavy, and that mountain-like attack instantly destroyed the formation they had covered up with great difficulty. Not only that, their flying swords suffered a heavy blow, and their primordial spirits were also shaken. Hit, Xiaohua laughed loudly and no longer moved forward. He pointed his finger without any trace of politeness. The cloud-suppressing seal rose up slightly and then suddenly pressed down. The group of swordsmen became anxious and tried their best to circulate their sword energy. While their bodies flew in all directions, their flying swords rushed towards the cloud-suppressing seal, trying to stop it from pressing down. Unfortunately, Xiaohua had been forced to cultivate bitterly for 5 years and had already reached the peak of the late stage of foundation establishment. That kind of magical power was simply unimaginable to them. How could they block it with their flying swords? That was simply a fool's dream. Chapter 2382. Crack, crack, crack. When the two flying swords collided with the cloud-suppressing seal, the tips of the swords immediately broke. The broken swords fell to the ground, and the masters of the flying swords also spat out a mouthful of blood. Their rapidly flying figures fell, dispirited on the foothills. When the rest of the swordsmen saw this, they couldn't help but be even more shocked. They hurriedly turned their flying swords around. How could they still dare to come into contact with Xiaohua's cloud-suppressing seal? Still want to leave? Xiaohua sneered. He pointed his hand and the cloud-suppressing seal let out a buzzing sound again. A cloud fell from above, covering the dozen or so swordsmen who wanted to escape. Go, Xiaohua raised his eyebrows, looking at the foothills not far away. The cloud-suppressing seal fell again. He didn't believe that if he smashed these swordsmen to death, their fellow apprentices wouldn't come to rescue them. Sure enough, when Xiaohua's cloud-suppressing seal slowly smashed on top of the cloud, the mountain rocks not far away shook. Suddenly 20 or so swordsmen appeared. Their faces were alarmed and each of them urged their flying swords. Those flying swords formed a slightly larger sword formation and rushed toward Xiaohua. Haha! Xiaohua saw another 20 or so flying swords and he beamed with joy. Just as he was about to release the soaring dragon shears, a swift and fierce sword chi suddenly rushed out from 3 feet below Xiaohua's body, directly stabbing toward Xiaohua's leg. Ah! Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. His divine sense very naturally swept over, but the sword chi's origin was empty. There was nothing wrong with it. What's going on? Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly urged his body, relying on his superb flying technique to dodge. Go! Xiaohua sensed that the sword chi had disappeared. His eyes turned slightly and he pointed with his finger. He didn't care about the sealed sword technique, and the cloud-suppressing seal swayed again, meeting the simple sword formation that was hastily formed. Rumble. There was another loud sound. The sword formation formed by 20 or so flying swords finally collided with the cloud-suppressing seal. The cloud-suppressing seal was actually somewhat crooked, and was pushed to the side. Xiaohua's body also slightly swayed. Suddenly, the swift and fierce sword chi from just now appeared again, and it was again within 2 feet. And at this time, the sword chi had already approached Xiaohua's neck. Formless sword. At this point, seeing that there was still no change in his divine sense, Xiaohua came to a realization no matter how stupid he was. However, Xiaohua wasn't shocked but delighted instead. He waved his hand and was about to execute the heaven and earth sleeve technique to envelop the sword chi. However, just as he turned around, his eyes turned again. His body moved swiftly and flew up slightly, approaching the cloud-suppressing seal. At this time, more than a dozen swordsmen appeared from other places and flew towards Cui Hongshan and the others. The 20 or so swordsmen who were blocking Xiaohua once again urged their sword energy to organize the chaotic flying swords and attack Xiaohua. That invisible sword once again disappeared from the sky. Xiaohua swept out with his Buddhist consciousness, but he still couldn't find any clues. Very good. Xiaohua secretly rejoiced in his heart. Then he stealthily opened his left hand. Within his Dharma eye, a faint blue brilliance appeared so unique among the numerous dim sword lights. At this moment, the light blue brilliance once again landed below Xiaohua. Ayaya! Xiaohua's face revealed panic. While urging the cloud-suppressing seal to block the attacks of the 20 swordsmen, he dodged the invisible sword below him. The invisible sword was indeed strange. Seeing that Xiaohua was in a very difficult situation, it immediately gave up its previous sneak attack and actually began to aimlessly attack Xiaohua's surroundings. If Xiaohua wasn't able to see it with his Dharma eye, he would really be somewhat exhausted to deal with it. Good, now is the time. Xiaohua's cloud-suppressing seal was once again hit by the flying swords of a group of sword cultivators. his figure was forced to fall. The invisible sword once again stabbed towards him, but the sword chi still hadn't appeared and was still 4 feet away. "Don't hurt my Taoist disciple, I'm coming." Right at this moment, a voice that Xiaohua was very familiar with resounded, and then a golden light that shot into the sky flew over from afar like a golden dragon. Although that golden light hadn't yet come close, that fierce baleful aura and the sound of wind tearing through the void could be heard. "Huh?" Li Zongbao. Xiaohua's divine sense swept and was immediately overjoyed. After the golden light, wasn't it precisely the snow-haired Li Zongbao? "Oh, Xiaohua." Li Zongbao released the immortal piercing whip and naturally also swept out with his divine sense. Seeing that Xiaohua's face hadn't changed in the slightest, he was also slightly stunned. He didn't expect that a Foundation establishment cultivator who relied on a magic treasure to resist 20 drawing swordsmen would actually be the first-level chi refining cultivator he saw before. Xiaohua's slight distraction allowed the invisible sword to come within a foot of him. The sword chi flashed and was about to pierce Xiaohua's heart. Li Zongbao also turned pale with fright. He also didn't discover the invisible sword. However, he was really far away. Even if he reminded or used the immortal piercing whip to save him, he couldn't do it. Just as Li Zongbao was regretting in his heart, he saw Xiaohua calmly raise his left hand slightly. At the same time, a golden light not inferior to the immortal piercing whip flashed out from Xiaohua's right hand. That golden light flashed away, and a bamboo leaf-like jade sword appeared. It fell between Xiaohua's left thumb and index finger. "Ah!" Immediately after, a sound of astonishment rang out. Not even 2 feet in front of Xiaohua, a petite swordswoman with a drawn sword appeared. Her dainty face was filled with absolute disbelief as she looked at Xiaohua, and her eyes were filled with pain. Because a jade-like soft hand and a lotus root-like arm were currently holding the bamboo leaf-like jade sword, and blood had just seeped out of her arm. Ouch! Seeing the female cultivator appear, Xiaohua couldn't help but feel regret in his heart. He brushed his hand and a Wu-Tsang pill appeared in his hand. With a flick of his hand, the Wu-Tsang pill was easily sent into the swordsman's mouth. When he did this as smoothly as moving clouds and flowing water, he himself was a bit astonished. "Granny, when did this young master have such tender feelings for the fairer sex? I forget it. Who told this young master to be a man?" Xiaohua couldn't help but secretly find an excuse for his actions. Once the Wu-Tsang pill entered the female swordsman's mouth, it immediately turned into a liquid that flowed down the woman's throat. The woman's almond eyes turned vertical, shocked and angry. She clearly resented Xiaohua for using poison, again. Just as she was about to circulate her energy to force the medicinal liquid out, she saw Xiaohua send the invisible sword in front of her eyes again. He said indifferently, "Still not taking it?" The woman was slightly stunned. The medicinal liquid of the Wu-Tsang pill had already entered her stomach. Although the woman didn't know what kind of pill Xiaohua gave her, she could still distinguish the medicinal fragrance of the Wu-Tsang pill. It was clearly a kind of healing pill. Seeing the invisible sword being sent back, the woman naturally raised her hand and used her uninjured left hand to receive it. Her mind didn't have any thoughts at all. Just as Xiaohua was showing tender feelings for the fairer sex, Li Zongbao's piercing immortal whip had already landed near the 20-sword swordsman. The whip's shadow flickered and turned into 20 rays of light that hit the swordsman's body. Puff puff, a series of light sounds could be heard. Many swordsmen's body flashed with sword rays, and their figures were all crooked and couldn't stand steadily in midair. After all, Li Zongbao was far from being a sword cultivator, and he had split into 20 whip shadows to attack the 20-sword swordsman at the same time. Moreover, he didn't have the piercing immortal whip in his hand, so the might of this magic weapon couldn't be fully displayed. Instead, it was blocked by the swordsman's attack. Gong, seeing that Xiaohua alone was enough to make everyone drink a pot of water, and even the woman's own arm had been chopped off, and this was another white-haired cultivator she had heard of before, the woman shouted without hesitation. She was the first to circulate her sword origin, and her figure disappeared in midair. "Want to go? Ah. Then you have to leave behind your flying swords." Xiaohua very naturally returned the invisible sword to the woman and immediately regretted it. Hearing the woman's shout to retreat, he immediately laughed and circulated the cloud-suppressing seal. Those 20 flying swords were firmly suppressed by him, and those swordsmen simply couldn't move. "Want to go? Quickly hand over your life." At this time, Li Zongbao had already flown over. He had already seen Xiaohua's action of returning the swords, but his face was cold, without any expression. At the same time, the piercing immortal whip flew back to his hand, and he was about to attack with magic power. Li Zongbao's reputation among sword cultivators was even greater than Xiao Hua's. Moreover, he was widely known by the swordsmen. Seeing this situation, they couldn't help but panic. How could they dare to stay any longer? They anxiously fled into the distance like stray dogs. So much so that, in the foothills 100 zhang away, several groups of swordsmen appeared and fled without fighting. Seeing the swordsmen fleeing, Li Zongbao's gaze swept over, and precisely saw the 10 people imprisoned by Xiao Hua's cloud-suppressing seal. With a cold snort, he swung the piercing immortal whip. With a rumbling sound of wind and thunder, that wave-like whip shadow rolled over and mercilessly smashed down. Even Xiao Hua somewhat couldn't bear to see the 10 swordsmen being smashed into meat paste. Soft-hearted. Li Zongbao put away the piercing immortal whip and coldly said, "That woman used the famous invisible sword named Guyu. Who knows how many Dao sect disciples have died in her hands? You, on the other hand, not only did you not take her life, you actually returned the invisible sword to her. This seems to be different from your hobby." As he spoke, Li Zongbao glanced at the 20 flying swords under the cloud-suppressing seal. Xiao Hua's face slightly reddened. Just now, it was purely a natural reaction without any thought. However, since he had already returned it, how could he have the nerve to take it back? He could only vent his anger on the 20 sword cultivators' flying swords. Junior is somewhat soft-hearted. Xiao Hua didn't hide it and said in a low voice. In his eyes, this Li Zongbao was a senior and he didn't care how Li Zongbao looked at him. "Junior? Your cultivation is almost at the middle stage of foundation establishment, you can just call me senior brother." Li Zongbao coldly said, "Moreover, this magic treasure of yours is also not bad. Just now, I thought I had encountered some outstanding talent." Xiao Hua embarrassedly laughed again and put away the cloud-suppressing seal. He smiled apologetically and said, "Senior brotherly, you should take a look. Isn't this the junk I obtained at the Taiching sect's Feather Immortal Assembly? How can it compare to senior brother's magic treasure?" Li Zongbao curled his lips. If it was someone else, he definitely wouldn't say anything, but Xiao Hua was different from others. "This magic treasure has been repaired quite a bit, and its power is close to that of my immortal whip. Just now, what was the magic treasure you used to cut that woman in half?" This poor Taoist actually didn't see it clearly. Chapter 2383. Alas, Xiao Hua took out the Tingjiao scissors with a bitter face and said, "I only have some junk here. How can it be compared to Brother Li's fairy-piercing whip?" Seeing that there was only half a Tingjiao scissors, Li Zongbao smiled and said, "It doesn't matter if it's complete or not as long as it can be used. You cut off the arm of Guyu, the shapeless sword. If word got out, everyone would be envious." This is nothing." Xiao Hua put away his magic weapon. At this time, Zhang Exan and the other disciples of the Utopia faction came over and bowed. "Greetings, Brother Li." Li Zongbao's face was cold and his attitude was different from Xiao Hua's. He asked, "Why are you here?" Zhang Exan was not surprised and quickly reported the cause of the matter. "Oh, you actually escaped from the Battle of Jingquan Mountain?" Li Zongbao glanced at Xiao Hua. "And it seems like that's the case." Xiao Hua rubbed his nose, looking somewhat baffled. Seeing Li Zongbao's surprise, Zhang Exan smiled bitterly. Almost all the cultivators in the Sky Patrol City knew that the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect had fallen because only 7 people from the Imperial Thunder Sect died. And Li Zongbao did not know about this. It seemed that Li Zongbao did not care about the situation of the battle. After Zhang Exan finished his report, Cui Hongshan and the others also came over. Zhen Minghui collected the storage pouches of the 20 or so swordsmen, as well as the 10 or so flying swords that Xiao Hua had knocked down, and handed them over to Xiao Hua. "No, this is Brother Li's." Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and asked Zhen Minghui to give the storage bag to Li Zongbao. "I don't want it." Li Zongbao waved his hand and said, "These things are useless to me." Then he looked at Xiao Hua and said, "If you like it, take it yourself." Great." Xiao Hua took the storage bag and said happily, "Thank you, Brother Li. Don't mention it, it was originally yours." Li Zongbao said lightly. Immediately, Cui Hongshan and the others came to meet him. They saw that Li Zongbao was powerful and knew that he was a famous disciple of the Utopia faction. After listening to Zhang Exan's introduction, they admired him even more. Li Zongbao's reputation was extremely famous in the Three Kingdoms. Even Cui Hongshan had regarded Li Zongbao as his goal. Or rather he was Tu Hong's idol before he met him. At the side, Zhang Xn also introduced proudly, "My senior brother Li's magic power is now boundless. People call him the #1 person below the Aurus core stage." However, these were words that he was used to saying. At this moment he stopped halfway and naturally looked at Xiaohua. Even Cui Hongshan, Zhen Minghui and the others had some thoughts. Li Zongbao was keenly aware of this. He glanced at Xiaohua and said faintly, "Zhang Xn, that's other people's false praise. How can you take it seriously? Didn't you see junior brother Xiao? You can deal with 20 bright swordsmen with ease. You're much more powerful than me." "Tisk, senior brother Li, don't flatter me." Xiaohua retorted bluntly, "That's because little brother's Dharma treasure is powerful. Little brother, I don't believe that if you wave your immortal piercing whip, they will still have a physiological reaction." And Li Zongbao did not refute. He knew that if he was any closer, the lives of those bright swordsmen might not have been saved. In the 5 or 6 years since the beginning of the war, his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. He had already reached the late stage of foundation establishment. Although he had not reached the peak, he was worthy of being called the #1 person below the Aurus core stage. Just like before, Xiaohua kept most of the things for himself and distributed a small portion to everyone. Li Zongbao looked at Xiaohua with interest and asked faintly, "Xiaohua, are you going back to Sky Patrol City now?" "Yes, where else can we go if not back to Sky Patrol City?" Xiaohua was slightly stunned and kept the storage bag and other things. Once we return to Sky Patrol City, the flying sword and storage bag will not come back." Li Zongbao narrowed his eyes and said, "Are you interested in going with me?" "Where to?" Xiaohua blinked and asked. "I don't know where to go." Li Zongbao said, "However, I'm going to kill Qin Jian. Are you interested?" "Who is Qin Jian?" Xiaohua was puzzled, but then he suddenly realized that he should have heard of him in the tea house in Sky Patrol City. He smiled and said, "Is he the illusory swordsman?" "Yes, you must have heard of him." Li Zongbao nodded and pointed at Xiaohua. "I'm not his opponent. If I can get junior brother Zhao's help, I'll be able to make a contribution." "Good," Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, "I'm willing to follow you." But then Xiaohua scratched his head and said, "Senior brother Li, I'm a disciple of the first team of the Imperial Thunder sect. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for me to follow you, is it?" As long as you're willing you can follow me now." Li Zongbao clapped his hands and took out a token with the appearance of a mountain peak. "What's this?" Xiaohua asked curiously. Li Zongbao said proudly, "This is the special token of the meeting hall of the True Path sect's Yanxi Mansion. I have the right to order all True Path sect disciples below the Aurus core stage to obey my orders." "Wow, so powerful." Xiaohua could not help but be envious. Imperial Thunder Sect's Xiaohua. Li Zongbao's face tightened and he raised the token. "I want you to follow me now. Do you understand?" Disciple Xiaohua understands. Xiaohua did not dare to neglect and bowed. Then Li Zongbao looked at Cui Hongshan and said, "Fellow Taoist Cui, please take out the token of the first team of the Imperial Thunder sect." "Yes." Cui Hongshan's heart was bitter and he obediently took out the token. "And yours?" Li Zongbao turned to look at Xiaohua. "Oh no." Xiaohua also woke up at this time. If he followed Li Zongbao, what would Cui Hongshan and the others do? Although they were about to reach the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, they were still ants in a war. "That. Senior brother Li, can I not go?" Xiaohua said embarrassedly. Li Zongbao coldly glared at him and said, "The meeting hall's token is a command to cultivators. No one dares to disobey. If you don't go, just wait for the meeting hall to kill you." "But I'm a little reluctant to part with the Imperial Thunder Sect brothers." Xiaohua did not dare to say it out loud and explained tactfully. Li Zongbao said coldly, "They are the survivors of Quanjin Mountain. They have already been rewarded. Other than me, who else doesn't know? My Dao sect's 11 survivors of Quanjin Mountain have all returned to their respective sections. I'm afraid the 6 of them will not stay in Sky Patrol City for long." There's no need to talk about these 2 disciples who have just reached the Foundation Establishment realm. Once they return to Sky Patrol City, they will be sent back to the Imperial Thunder sect. "Oh, I see." Xiaohua heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. "All right then, I'm willing to follow Brother Li." Chapter 2384. But immediately after, Xiaohua faintly felt that something was wrong. After Li Zongbao placed the command medallion on top of the two command medallions and a bright light flashed, Xiaohua suddenly realized something and said, "That's not right, Senior Brother Li. I'm the same as Senior Brother Zhen and the rest. We're both heroes. I can also return to the Imperial Thunder sect. Senior Brother Li, you can't lie to me like this, right?" Li Zongbao smiled and returned the tokens to Cui Hongshan and Xiaohua. "It's too late now. You've been conscripted by me. Senior Brother Li." Xiaohua frowned. He still wanted to dawdle. "Fellow Cui and the rest returned to the Imperial Thunder sect. Naturally, you're the only one in the first team. Your contributions belong to the first team. You don't want to win glory for the sect?" Li Zongbao asked. This. Thinking of his prideful master, Xiaohua hesitated. If he had outstanding contributions, he would be extremely happy. Besides, there are still many flying swords for sword cultivators. Now that there are drawing swordsmen and you and I have killed Qin Jian, won't we have illusory swordsmen's flying swords? Don't you want their storage pouches? Li Zongbao continued to ask. This. Thinking of the dozens of illusory swordsmen's flying swords in his space, Xiaohua lost interest. Cough cough, Li Zongbao continued, the sword Dao war is intense now. Other than some disciples who haven't improved for a long time, there are many disciples with potential who are about to enter the battlefield. According to what I know, Yun Guichong and Hongxia Fairy from the Washing Flower sect will be here soon. These words instantly lit up Xiaohua's eyes. Xiaohua said without any hesitation, "Let's see what Senior Brother Li is talking about. It is my duty as a cultivator to contribute to my Dao sect. Even without the reasons that Senior Brother Li has mentioned, I would still follow Senior Brother Li. Isn't it Qin Jian's head? I'll chop it off and use it as a urinal for you." It's good that you know." Li Zongbao looked at the sky and said, "I've received news that there will be an ambush in the Gale Snow Plains. I'm afraid it's Qin Jian's doing. Let's go now." "Senior Brother Li, we still have to wait for a while." Xiaohua smiled apologetically. "I think it's better to escort them back to the Sky Patrol City. They're disciples on duty, you're still escorting them?" Li Zongbao was a little bit unhappy. Xiaohua blinked his eyes at Li Zongbao but didn't explain. "All right." Li Zongbao was also helpless. He knew clearly that Xiaohua did not want the disciples of the thunder-controlling sect to be in danger. Secondly, he was impressed by the power of Xiaohua's cloud-suppressing seal. Together with his immortal piercing whip, he might be able to kill Qin Jian. Therefore he had to give in. Fortunately, they were not too far away from the teleportation device in the Sky Patrol City. After a day and a night, Li Zongbao found the teleportation device that was very secretive and only used by a few people. The Golden Core cultivator in charge of the teleportation device did not expect that Cui Hongshan and Zhang Xian, who were not even at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment stage, would find this place. When he saw Li Zongbao leaving, he opened the teleportation device and sent the disciples of the Thunder-controlling sect and the Utopia faction back to the Sky Patrol City in batches. Damn it, having a reputation is really useful. Xiaohua was a little envious. Not only can we use the secretive teleportation device, but we can also recruit other disciples at will. Even Cui Hongshan has to admire us. Thinking of this, Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said, "Brother Li, isn't it a little tiring for us to fly like this? I have a flying device here, why don't we use it?" "You have a flying device?" Li Zongbao regained his indifference. "Why didn't you take it out earlier?" "Heh." Xiaohua clapped his hands and took out a small flying boat. He said with a smile, "This belongs to the Qiqiao sect. I was afraid that they would ask for it." "Well, there's no harm in using it in the future," Li Zongbao said as he stepped on it. "Just say it's a gift from me." "Damn it. Why is there such a big gap between people?" Xiaohua and Zhang Xian were puzzled. After boarding the flying boat, Xiaohua naturally controlled it. Li Zongbao sat cross-legged and had already entered a meditative state. Xiaohua was originally prepared to wait for Li Zongbao to ask about his experiences these past few years and why his cultivation had already reached the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Seeing that Li Zongbao didn't ask, he felt relieved. He controlled the flying boat while checking his cultivation for the past 5 years. Xiaohua's current constitution was of the earth attribute. The cultivation method he cultivated was also an ordinary cultivation method from the spirit husbandry sect. When he asked for the cultivation method from Zhang Qingxiao at Yellowflower Ridge, he wanted to see if there was a chance to change his cultivation method. However, he didn't expect that in a short 10 years he would be forced to cultivate this cultivation method to the end. Now he was already at the peak of the late stage of the foundation establishment realm. In a few years, as long as he cultivated normally, he should be able to condense his core according to the situation when he was refining his qi. However, when he thought about the strange state of his foundation establishment realm, Xiaohua frowned. He really didn't know what kind of test he would face when he condensed his core. If there was a lightning tribulation, Xiaohua didn't dare to think about it anymore. His body trembled slightly. Maybe I should make some preparations for condensing my core, Xiaohua thought to himself. However, he immediately scratched his ears and cheeks. He didn't have any reference for condensing his core. Even if he was helpless at this moment, he was probably preparing to condense his core, right? Martial Uncle Zhenqing is the best. Xiaohua suddenly thought of the jade slip that Zhenqing gave him. Not only did he obtain some understanding of the foundation establishment realm from the jade slip, but he also obtained a strange object in the ink-black forest and refined it into the current wishful staff. Now he had to rely on Zhenqing's jade slip to comprehend the core. Zhenqing really owed him a big favor. Alas, it's a pity that I returned to the Imperial Thunder sect in a hurry and didn't visit Martial Uncle Zhenqing. I don't know if Martial Uncle Zhenqing and Chen Yi know each other? Xiaohua thought of Chen Yi and felt a little embarrassed. If Chen Yi and Martial Uncle Zhenqing are friends, I'm afraid I can't make a move. Forget it, if that's the case, why can't I let her go? There's also Rock Border Sect's Chang Yefeng's Kunlun mirror. That thing looks a little familiar. If I have the chance, I must get it and take a look. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua separated his primordial spirit to look at the mysterious dark clouds. The strange fragrance in the sky was still there, and Xiaohua's primordial spirit had grown a lot. It was still dancing happily with the fluctuations as if it didn't know fatigue. However, at this time, there was a trace of mystery in the dance. When it danced, the whole primordial spirit also trembled, as if it was about to become one with the fluctuations. Of course, more than half of the black silk wood was gone, and the place where Xiaohua's primordial spirit was located was a lot taller. It was almost 30% of the whole sky. If I look at this progress, a piece of black silk wood can actually cultivate 60% of the soul cultivation method in the sky. This thing is really precious. If this young master wants to master this soul cultivation method, then I'll have to make a piece of it. Xiaohua thought to himself, and then retreated from the heaven ring of qi. In addition to the soul cultivation method, the Phoenix Dharma body's progress was extremely fast. Since Li Zongbao was here, Xiaohua wouldn't easily release the Dharma body. As for the dragon transformation art, it was really like an old ox pulling a broken cart. After cultivating for so long, there wasn't any special progress. However, if it wasn't for the dragon transformation art, Xiaohua's meridians would have been broken by the spiritual qi of heaven and earth at the beginning of his cultivation and died. Therefore Xiaohua only casually looked, and still let the primordial spirit cultivate endlessly without slacking off. This time Xiaohua's cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds, but it was different from last time. There wasn't too much spiritual qi of heaven and earth in his meridians that hadn't been refined. He only needed to refine it when he was cultivating, and it wouldn't cause any special impact to his cultivation. After Xiaohua checked all of this, he closed his eyes and digested the information from the primordial spirit that comprehended the sword slip. Since the sword pouch that Ling Yunwu was looking for was together with the black silk wood, it was obviously not an ordinary item. The most basic use of the sword pouch was to store flying swords. It was precisely because of this that the sword pouch needed to be made with special techniques and materials to be able to withstand the sword hums of the flying swords without breaking. Ling Yunwu wanted to use the sword pouch to catch the spirit swallowing bugs. However, in addition to this, the sword pouch had an even more important use, and that was to set up a sword formation. Regarding the sword formation, Xiaohua was deeply engraved in his heart. It was because of that damn 7-star sword formation that he was left in the great formation of Golden Spring Mountain. He was forced to cultivate bitterly for 5 years, and even the Phoenix celestial body benefited from it. In Xiaohua's understanding, the sword formation was either a cooperation between several people or set up by himself. Of course, if he set up the sword formation by himself, then the requirements of his divine sense and primordial spirit were extremely high. Even Xiaohua himself couldn't easily use it now. However, this sword pouch made up for this shortcoming. According to what was recorded in the sword scroll and Xiaohua's understanding, a swordsman only needed to refine the sword pouch, and then put the flying swords of the same quality into the sword pouch according to the arrangement of the sword formation. When facing the enemy, he only needed to open the sword pouch, and the flying swords would be arranged according to the arrangement of the sword formation. A swordsman controlling the sword formation through the sword pouch was much easier than directly using divine sense and primordial spirit to control the sword formation. Great! Xiaohua was overjoyed. If Li Zongbao wasn't present, he would definitely do a somersault on this flowing cloud-flying ship. His sword playing the world was to use 10,000 flying swords to conquer the world. Unfortunately, he could only split out 64 flying swords, and even after using his primordial spirit to control the flying swords, he still had some reservations and wasn't used to splitting out flying swords. Therefore, there was no need to mention the sword formation. Now, with this sword pouch and the flying swords transformed by Ling Yunwu and the other illusory swordsmen, wouldn't they be able to form the sword formation? Thinking, Xiaohua immediately took out the sword scroll and other items that he got from Golden Spring Mountain, and searched one by one to see if he could find the array of the 7 stars sword formation. Ah, there really is one. Not long after, Xiaohua found a complete sword scroll. It was one of the sword scrolls that he picked up from the space of the 7 stars great array. This young master knew that among these 10 swordsmen who set up the great array, there must be someone holding the sword scroll of the great array. Chapter 2385. Who? The wolf-headed man was furious. He threw away the leg bone in his hand and stood up. His wild gaze swept towards the source of the voice. Haha, it's actually 2 cultivators with soft skin and tender flesh. Aren't they just giving us a treat? The leopard-headed man swept with his divine sense and laughed loudly. His body didn't move at all. The wolf-headed man naturally also saw them. Seeing that they were only 2 cultivators around the middle stage of foundation establishment, he sneered. In front of him were several cultivators who were being eaten raw. Which one of them wasn't stronger than them? Don't be careless. The pig-headed man hurriedly stood up and said, 2 foundation establishment cultivators wouldn't have come here for no reason. Moreover, seeing us brothers here, they still dared to come here. They must have something to rely on. So what? The leopard-headed man sneered but still stood up. Nearby, more than a dozen valiant beast cultivators covered in blood also stood up and threw away the meat in their hands. Feeling their hands, they each picked up their own weapons from the ground. Their eyes revealed a fierce expression as they looked towards the source of the voice. Xiaohua, you only need to use the cloud-suppressing seal. You can only imprison as many as you can. On the flowing cloud-flying ship, Li Zongbao's voice was still calm as he instructed. My immortal piercing whip will follow your cloud-suppressing seal. Imprison as many as you imprison, I will kill as many as you kill. Good. Xiaohua couldn't compare to Li Zongbao's ruthlessness. His divine sense swept over, and the anger in his heart had already been ignited. Naturally, there were deaths on the battlefield and no one could blame anyone. However, the cruelty of the beast cultivators had long surpassed the scope of war. How could Xiaohua be merciful? Gong, seeing that the dozen or so beast cultivators had also flown into the air and were about to surround them, Xiaohua clapped his hand. The cloud-suppressing seal rumbled and flew into the air. As soon as the cloud-suppressing seal appeared, its ancient bronze brilliance greatly flourished. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth swarmed in, and rays of white jade condensed at the edge of the cloud-suppressing seal. Oh! Seeing the cloud-suppressing seal's might, Li Zongbao was also slightly shocked. Clearly, it had exceeded his expectations. Isn't it just a magic weapon? It's not like I haven't seen it before. The wolf-headed beast cultivator at the front sneered, his hoarse voice spreading far and wide. At the same time he waved his hand, and a weapon that looked very similar to a wolf-tooth club appeared in the air. His body flew up, completely disproportionate to his enormous size. Go! The leopard-headed beast cultivator also waved its hand. 2 other ox-headed beast cultivators flew out from the encirclement and charged towards Xiaohua and Li Zongbao. It's actually a demonic weapon? Xiaohua's divine sense swept over and saw the wolf-tooth club in the wolf-headed beast cultivator's hand. He couldn't help but be slightly astonished and secretly said, This beast cultivator, when did he start using demonic tools? Soon after, Xiaohua sneered and said, Brother Li, it looks like these beast cultivators aren't fools. They actually know to separate and face the enemy. This little brother's cloud-suppressing seal might not be able to wipe out his mother in one go. However, it seems that the bold one is the leader. How about we kill these 4 beasts first? No problem. As long as you can imprison them, I will be able to kill them. Li Zongbao's immortal piercing whip was already in his hand. Fall. Xiaohua's hand formed a seal, and the cloud-suppressing seal rapidly expanded. When it was about 10 zhang tall, it slightly trembled and a cloud fell down, smashing towards the wolf-headed beast cultivators. The wolf-headed beast cultivator held the wolf-tooth club in his hand. Seeing the cloud-suppressing seal's terrifying power, he also started to take it seriously. However, he was also clear in his heart that such a powerful magic weapon wasn't something an early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator could easily control. Therefore, he urged his magic power to quickly fly towards Xiaohua, wanting to seize the opportunity before the cloud-suppressing seal fell. Who would have thought that Xiaohua only slightly urged the cloud-suppressing seal to fly towards him? When the cloud-suppressing seal was slightly raised, a valiant imprisoning force pressed down on the cloud-suppressing seal, directly suppressing the magic power in his body. He actually couldn't break free? Roar! The wolf-headed beast cultivator was shocked. Without thinking, it raised its head and roared. Then, its body suddenly expanded. The clothes that were previously draped over its body were torn to shreds. A monster with the upper body of a huge black wolf and the lower body of a human appeared in the air. This monster was at least 20 feet tall. Then, in the abnormally thick wolf claws, the wolf-tooth club swayed like a toy, stirring up the spiritual energy with a hoo sound and smashed towards the cloud. Buzz, just like Xiaohua's previous waving of the wishful steel staff smashed the imprisoning force of the Seven Stars Great Array, this wolf-headed beast cultivator's demonic weapon also shook the imprisoning force above the cloud. The cloud condensed by magic power was also somewhat collapsing along with the demonic weapon's agitation. Hiss! Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. This was a technique that used force to break restrictions. Of course, he had long known about it, but he didn't use it too much. He was often using it for sneak attacks. It was only recently that he obtained the wishful steel staff that this technique had a chance to be used openly. He didn't expect that this extremely ugly beast cultivator had actually used it to such a degree of perfection. At this moment, Xiaohua came to a sudden understanding. It was probably precisely because of this that these Dao sect cultivators on the ground were so easily annihilated. If there was no Li Zongbao on the side, Xiaohua would have already taken out the wishful steel staff and fought with these damn things. However, since he wanted to cooperate with Li Zongbao now, it was better to use the cloud-suppressing seal. Fall, Xiaohua didn't dare to neglect. He once again formed a seal and another imprisoning cloud fell. Woo! The several beast cultivators next to the wolf-headed beast cultivator obviously also noticed the abnormality. They also urged their secret method, and each beast cultivator's beast form appeared. The demonic weapon in their hands danced very tacitly and smashed towards the cloud. Buzz, 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 under the attack of these four powerful beast cultivators' demonic artifacts, the imprisoning cloud, which had always been invincible, only lasted for a few breaths. Then it let out a roar similar to the cloud-suppressing seal and disappeared into the air. Ha! The wolf-headed beast cultivator laughed. Dao Sect's child. This is the toy you rely on in front of this grandpa? It's just a piece of junk. Why don't you obediently give me your life? After saying that, he actually gave up the cloud-suppressing seal and wanted to rush toward Xiaohua, wanting to smash Xiaohua's abnormally young head into pieces. However, Xiaohua didn't pay attention to them. He pointed a finger, and the cloud-suppressing seal suddenly trembled. Its ancient bronze brilliance flourished greatly, and several patches of clouds once again floated down. Streaks of light once again enveloped the four beast cultivators from above. Roar! The wolf-headed beast cultivator roared towards the sky. Grandpa will tear your magic weapon to pieces. Let you completely give up. Immediately, his figure was like a gust of wind, crossing the air, and a dark figure rushed towards the falling clouds of the cloud-suppressing seal. At the same time, the leopard head and other beast cultivators emitted a black brilliance, and even some black gas came out. They waved their demonic weapons, trying to break free from the imprisonment above the clouds, and wanted to rush to Xiaohua, who was several feet away. Umph! Xiaohua coldly snorted, and his hand shook again. The cloud-suppressing seal rumbled again, and several pieces of clouds fell again to attack the wolf-headed beast cultivator. Seeing Xiaohua unexpectedly drop clouds one after another, and his magic power not showing the slightest sign of exhaustion, the wolf-headed beast cultivator had a somewhat bad feeling in his heart. He saw that the wolf-headed beast cultivator's figure had yet to touch the clouds, but the several clouds piled up together with a suffocating force prevented him from flying a step higher. The bronze brilliance above the clouds reflected the bloodthirsty eyes of the beast cultivator, and once again aroused the beast cultivator's wild nature. Bang bang bang. With the sound of hammering in succession, The pitch-black fists of several beast cultivators hit his body. Bang bang bang, the other whip shadows also fell down in succession, and the bodies of the other 3 beast cultivators also collapsed. They were all badly mutilated, and they screamed miserably as they fell from the sky. Just when Li Zongbao killed the wolf-headed beast cultivator, Xiaohua's divine sense swept over, and his magic power surged again. The cloud-suppressing seal flew towards the surrounding beast cultivators, who were originally eager to besiege them, but when they saw the wolf-headed beast cultivator being killed, their eyes flashed with hesitation. However, the dozen or so beast cultivators surrounded the 2 of them, so the cloud-suppressing seal couldn't cover all of them, and could only smash the pig-headed beast cultivator and a few others. Those few are yours. This was the second time Xiaohua saw the might of the immortal piercing whip, and he was also envious in his heart. He pointed his finger at the remaining beast cultivators and shouted. Chapter 2386. Okay, Li Zongbao responded indifferently and waved the immortal piercing whip again. A row of whip shadows danced again, and like a stormy sea, they smashed towards the remaining beast cultivators. However, Xiaohua could see that the immortal piercing whip this time was obviously much dimmer than the previous one. Presumably, it was because Li Zongbao's magic power was insufficient. Woo, the immortal piercing whip whimpered as it smashed towards the remaining beast cultivators. When the 4 or 5 beast cultivators saw how powerful the immortal piercing whip was, they knew that just dodging and running away was absolutely not enough. They roared loudly, and their bodies were also suffused with black light. They waved the demonic artifacts in their hands and bravely attacked the whip shadows. Poo poo poo. Several sounds rang out as the whip shadows hit the demonic artifacts. The demonic artifacts shook and almost fell from the hands of the beast cultivators. However, even so, several beast cultivators still blocked Li Zongbao's immortal piercing whip. Only a leopard head beast cultivator's demonic artifact was smashed by the immortal piercing whip and fell into the air. Seeing this, Li Zongbao's face was slightly embarrassed. He clenched his teeth and the magic power in his body surged again. The immortal piercing whip in his hand suddenly emitted a golden light. In that golden light, talismans circulated, showing extreme power. Attack! Li Zongbao roared, and his body moved along with the whip. 5 immortal piercing whips of the same size appeared in the air and attacked the 5 beast cultivators with earth-shattering force. As for Xiaohua, the cloud-suppressing seal swayed and easily trapped the 6 beast cultivators. He urged his magic power one after another, and one after another, imprisoning clouds fell down. Those 6 beast cultivators were obviously extremely powerful, and their respective devil tools were also extraordinary. Unexpectedly, just like the wolf-headed beast cultivator, they were able to defeat Xiaohua's clouds one after another. If it was someone else, under the attack of these 6 beast cultivators, even if the cloud-suppressing seal was extraordinary, their magic power would have already been exhausted, just like Li Zongbao. Unfortunately, they encountered Xiaohua. If Li Zongbao could be called the number 1 person under the gold core stage, then Xiaohua could look down on all the cultivators under the nascent soul stage. How could his magic power be measured by these beast cultivators? Following that, the clouds from the cloud-suppressing seal fell one after another, seemingly endless. The beast cultivators finally collapsed. After the final attack, the beast cultivators couldn't even hold their demonic artifacts steadily and were imprisoned by the clouds. Li Zongbao's immortal piercing whip split into 5 and attacked the 5 beast cultivators respectively. The beast cultivators looked at each other and knew that this was the final battle to determine victory. Either you die or I die. Therefore, each of them activated all the strength in their body as well as all the magic power in their body, and waved their demonic weapons, bringing about the sound of wind and drums. Boom. The 5 whips hit the 5 demonic artifacts at almost the same time. The demonic artifacts were all knocked away by the immortal piercing whip's unstoppable force. Moreover, the immortal piercing whip's shadow also imprinted itself onto the 5 beast cultivators as they flew. Ah! The 5 beast cultivators screamed at the same time. Their steel-like bodies were torn open and they fell from the sky. Pooh! At the same time, Li Zongbao couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale gold. He actually activated his magic power and injured his meridians. Xiaohua glanced at Li Zongbao. It wasn't out of his expectations. Li Zongbao was only in the late stage of foundation establishment. Facing more than 10 beast cultivators whose strength was comparable to late-stage foundation establishment, being able to perish together with them could be considered rare and commendable. Go! Xiao Hua pointed the cloud-suppressing seal. The cloud-suppressing seal flew over with a rumble, smashing the beast cultivators that fell from Li Zongbao's attack to death. Only then did it fly back and smash the 6 beast cultivators that were imprisoned by him. Just as they were about to be smashed to death or injured like the cow-headed beast cultivator and the others, a sudden change occurred. The boar-headed beast cultivator that was easily imprisoned earlier suddenly had a burst of multicolored light appear around his body. He immediately broke free from the cloud-suppressing seal's imprisonment and flew away like a wisp of smoke. His flying speed was actually extremely fast. Xiao Hua was stunned and slightly raised his eyebrows. He thoughtfully looked at the boar-headed beast cultivator's back and didn't chase after him in a hurry. Don't let him escape. Li Zongbao's figure stood in midair. Seeing that Xiao Hua's magic power didn't seem to be exhausted, he lightly said. Yes, Xiao Hua didn't beat around the bush. He raised his hand and the cloud-suppressing seal became more than 10 feet in size. It smashed down and smashed the 5 beast cultivators into meat paste. Immediately after, Xiao Hua didn't put away the cloud-suppressing seal and shouted, "Brother Li, wait a moment." The magic power in his body surged as he used the hibernating thunder escape and chased after the boar-headed beast cultivator. And Li Zongbao's face was still calm, but a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. He patted his storage bag and swallowed a pill. Chapter 2387. And this is your Imperial Thunder Sect's business. You don't need to tell me. Li Zongbao said without opening his eyes, I've consumed a lot of magic power and need to adjust my breathing. You can finish the rest. Yes. Xiao Hua saw that Li Zongbao's complexion was still pale gold, and knew that he hadn't recovered yet. Thus he agreed and took out the suppressing cloud seal. He smashed a large hole in the ground nearby, and threw the corpses of dozens of beast cultivators into it. Then he buried them. Xiao Hua didn't hesitate to take the beast cultivators' storage pouches and demonic tools. As for the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples' corpses, although Li Zongbao had already cleaned them up, they were still too horrible to look at. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and closed his eyes. He put the male and female disciples' corpses into 2 storage pouches. As for their belongings, Xiao Hua cleaned them up and put them into another storage pouch. When everything was done, Xiao Hua glanced at Li Zongbao, who was meditating. He took out the jade slips and other items from the Lightning Converting Palace's Foundation Establishment disciples and looked through them. Then he took out 2 of them. One of the 2 jade slips had a restriction, and it was a restriction unique to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Although Xiao Hua hadn't touched it before, the faint flash of lightning was enough to show that if he wasn't sure he could break it, it was better not to touch it. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and put away the jade slip. He looked at the other one again. After a long time, Xiao Hua's brows unconsciously furrowed. He raised his eyes and looked in a direction in the distance. He seemed to have thought of something. After a long while, Xiao Hua put away the jade slip. He patted his hand and took out a Reliance Lotus pill from the Imperial Thunder Sect disciple's storage pouch. He put it in his mouth and closed his eyes to ponder. These Imperial Thunder Sect disciples came from the Imperial Thunder Sect. According to the jade slip, a cultivator named Dui Miaoqing sent a distress message to the Imperial Thunder Sect's Palace Master Dui Jia. However, this message didn't mention the location or the reason. I'm afraid this message is very important and needs to be spoken by a dead Imperial Thunder Sect disciple. Or maybe everything is in this restricted jade slip. It's fine if I'm not a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. If I can break the restriction, then so be it. If I can't, then I don't have to worry about the jade slip being destroyed. But since we have to send the news of these disciples' deaths back, we have to take the items back and this jade slip cannot be broken. I wonder if Martial Uncle Dui Miaoqing is still alive? Should I return to Sentry City now and pass this message to Martial Uncle Qianimo in the discussion hall? Well, I'm afraid I don't have to go back directly. Since she asked the Foundation Establishment stage disciples to go back and ask for help, she shouldn't be in danger right now. Maybe she's trapped in some kind of magic formation and can't get out for the time being. She's waiting for the Imperial Thunder School disciples to come and help. Unfortunately, her disciples were all killed by beast cultivators. If she hadn't run into me, who would have known that she was trapped here? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and made up his mind. Let's wait for Li Zongbao to adjust his breathing before we ask for his opinion. Sigh, this young master's cultivation is a little too fast. Immediately, Xiao Hua began to worry about his own affairs. When I was in the Imperial Thunder Sect, I just reached the late stage of Foundation Establishment stage. According to my cultivation speed, I'm afraid it will take decades or even hundreds of years to reach the peak of the late stage of foundation establishment stage. Therefore, I didn't even think of preparing to condense the elixir. Now, after being plotted against by Tu Hong, I rushed to the peak of the late stage of foundation establishment stage within 5 years. It seems that I can condense the elixir at any time, but I haven't found the Qianli elixir and the Lingli elixir. And these two elixirs are the key to condensing the elixir. One is to solidify the genuine essence and produce the golden elixir from nothing in the Dantian. The other is to increase the chance of producing the golden elixir. Others have started to prepare when they were in the late stage of foundation establishment stage, but I was directly sent to the war. How can I have a chance? Damn it, these two elixir recipes are also extremely important. I've changed a lot of elixir recipes, but there's none in my storage. Even if I want to refine it myself, I can't do it. Hee hee. Thinking of this, Xiaohua squinted at Li Zongbao in the distance. Li Zongbao's cultivation is in the late stage of foundation establishment stage. This guy is the treasure of the Utopia faction. In his storage bag. I don't know if there's any elixir. However, this thought of Xiaohua's was just a flash. His cultivation was only close to the middle stage of foundation establishment stage. How could he directly ask Li Zongbao about condensing the elixir? Although Xiaohua was still very assured about Li Zongbao, he sympathized with him and Kai Zhuoxia. Well, to be more vulgar, he and Li Zongbao were somewhat related by marriage. However, after all, Kai Zhuoxia was no longer in this world, and he and Hong Xia Fairy didn't really have dual cultivation. He didn't dare to reveal the truth in front of Li Zongbao. Forget it, if it's really condensing the elixir and Li Zongbao sees it, there's no need to hide anything from him. That's God's will. Xiaohua thought again, but if it's not in his sight, it's better not to let him know. I only hope that after killing Qin Jian I can quickly return to Sky Patrol City, and I can go to EG to find Qianli elixir and Lingli elixir. Li Zongbao really consumed a lot of spiritual power. After adjusting his breath for half a day, he got up from the ground, glanced at Xiaohua who was also sitting in the distance, and asked faintly, "Junior brother Xiao, have you settled everything?" "Yes, senior brother Li." Xiaohua heard, opened his eyes, flew over and nodded. "Senior brother and senior sister's corpses? I've collected them separately. When I meet the female disciples, I'll ask them to arrange them carefully. I've also collected the token and other things in another storage bag. You don't have to say it in such detail." Li Zongbao waved his hand. "It's still the same old saying, this is your Imperial Thunder Sect's matter, I won't care. Moreover, if there's anything in your sect, you can tell me, I won't restrict you, you can go wherever you want." Xiaohua still wanted to discuss with Li Zongbao, but when he heard Li Zongbao's words he stopped and nodded. "Well, I know. However, you don't have to leave now. Wait and see if there are other Imperial Thunder Sect disciples in front. If there are, ask them to send the message back to Sky Patrol City. I don't have to go there personally." "That's good." Li Zongbao waved his hand and said, "Let's go. Today I was a little careless. If it weren't for you I could only run away. If you really want to leave I still have to think carefully. Without your cooperation, it's really not easy to kill Qin Jian." Haha, Xiaohua smiled apologetically. "Brother Li, you're too modest. I just took advantage of a magic weapon, I don't have much spiritual power. In my opinion, senior brother's immortal piercing whip is a real magic weapon, it consumes a lot of spiritual power, and its power is definitely more than that." Li Zongbao's figure flew up. Seeing that Xiaohua was also slowly following behind him, a rare smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "And Xiaohua, you're very good. No wonder back then. Zhuoxia said you're outstanding. Your spiritual power is very strong. Although you're only in the middle stage of foundation establishment, your control of the cloud suppressing seal is far from what I can do. In fact, I even feel that your magical power is not inferior to that of a golden core cultivator." "Of course not," Xiaohua said hurriedly. Without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, Li Zongbao raised his hand again and said, "Don't be anxious. It's good that you're humble and I'm also relieved. After all, there's always someone better than you. Staying true to one's heart is the foundation of us cultivators. But sometimes, if you're too humble, it makes people feel that you're fake. Sometimes, when you show your strength, the benefits you get are also far beyond hiding it. Look, your flowing cloud flying ship is not bad, right? You don't dare to take it out casually. I am not someone else. Let's not talk so much. This is your own matter. Even if I see it, I won't say anything more." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. His spiritual power was getting deeper day by day, and it was very easy to be exposed with his every move. However, not to mention the other secrets he had Just the pure cultivation of a Taoist sect meant that he might have to face an unknown enemy above the spirit-severing stage. How could he not be careful? Xiaohua took out the flowing cloud-flying ship again and invited Li Zongbao to get on. He smiled apologetically and said, "Thank you for your teachings, senior brother. I understand. Senior brother, please point out the direction to go." Li Zongbao regained his indifferent expression. After pointing out the direction to fly, he said, "Your eyesight is not bad. This divine whip of mine is a famous magic weapon of my utmost happiness sect. It used to be used by a nascent soul grandmaster. Because of my reputation, the sect bestowed it to me when I was only in the foundation establishment stage. Although I've refined it a few times, I still can't completely control it. Moreover, I think that with my current cultivation, I can only use less than 10% of this magic weapon's power." Less than 10%. Xiaohua's eyes widened and he was very shocked. Actually, saying that it's 10% is just me boasting. Li Zongbao smiled bitterly. "I personally saw that nascent soul grandmaster's actions. With just a whip shadow, the heavens fell and the earth split. A mountain peak was split apart by this divine whip." Hiss, that's right, Xiaohua suddenly saw the scene in front of Chicken Crow Mountain. The scene of the old man waving his flying sword and slicing off the mountain peak appeared in front of his eyes. "Damn it, I'm really lucky. I've encountered 2 nascent soul cultivators and luckily escaped." Xiaohua unconsciously thought of that nascent soul cultivator in Ink Shadow Black Forest and Taoist Jingxi who chased after him for several years. Fortunately, I didn't give them a chance. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have been able to escape. It seems that my suppressing cloud seal and soaring dragon scissors are not enough to resist nascent soul cultivators. Thinking of this, Xiaohua thought of the overturning sea seal that Fang Yuan had mentioned. If he could obtain the refinement method of the overturning sea seal, or even a complete overturning sea seal, it might be much stronger than the suppressing cloud seal. Thus, sometimes revealing one's strength and getting the attention of the sect may not be a bad thing. Li Zongbao didn't know how Xiaohua was thinking about killing nascent soul cultivators. He only casually said, "Your Imperial Thunder sect might not be able to compare to my Tai Ching sect, but if you can take out 1 or 2 magic weapons that are comparable to the divine whip, it will be extremely easy. It will be much better than your suppressing cloud seal." In this environment, their cultivation will definitely advance by leaps and bounds. Oh, that's true. Xiaohua didn't expect Li Zongbao's thoughts to jump so far. He was slightly stunned and nodded. "Actually, sometimes I'm also thinking that whether it's sword cultivators or Taoists, they're just different cultivation methods. They're all cultivators of the Dawn Rain continent. As cultivators, why are they so anxious to kill each other?" Li Zongbao's words shocked Xiaohua even more. When Xiaohua heard this, he was deeply moved and said with a smile, "That's right. I met the twin female swordsmen of the Huan country at the Tai Ching sect's Feather Immortal Assembly. Oh, wasn't senior brother Li also there at that time? Those 2 female swordsmen were very amiable. They're far from comparable to the swordsmen in the war. If there's no war, they're all modest gentlemen." Li Zongbao nodded. "If there's a war, they're all murderous demons. We look at sword cultivators like that, and sword cultivators look at us cultivators like that too." Instantly Xiaohua thought of Ling Yunwu and that Yuan. The 2 exceptionally loving sword cultivator husband and wife. If it wasn't for the war, how could they have fallen at Gold Spring Mountain? Ling Yunwu admittedly transformed into a sword, but that Yuan ended up being a martyr. However, the situation at that time was dangerous. There was no need for Guyu. How could he be merciful? Perhaps the evil is in this war and not in the cultivators and swordsmen? Xiaohua sighed inwardly. If there's a chance, I still want to see if I can distinguish between the 2 of them among those 10 flying swords. Even if they transformed into swords, I still want them to stay together. Seeing Xiaohua pondering, Li Zongbao thought that he didn't agree with his point of view and said, "Actually, don't look at the atrocities of beast cultivators. It's really despicable. But the actions of some cultivators aren't inferior by much." "Oh. There's such a thing?" Xiaohua was stunned. He originally thought that only when beast cultivators and demon beasts cultivated at the same time, there would be a change in their mentality and so on. Only then would they commit such atrocities. He didn't expect that cultivators could also do such a thing. Humans and beasts in some aspects are so similar. Li Zongbao didn't explain and sighed. That's right. Xiaohua thought of those 10 swordsmen again. Didn't they also commit violence against the female cultivators of the Dao sect? If cultivators did this, it would also be normal. Unfortunately, we're only foundation establishment cultivators. Although our hearts are big, our strength is limited. It's already not bad that we're able to keep ourselves safe in this war. Li Zongbao looked at the spotlessly white ground and mountains and said, "The twin female swordsmen you mentioned just now are the key to this war. If we can find them or find out where they died. If we can prove that they have nothing to do with the Tao sect, the sword cultivators won't have an excuse to fight, and this war will end." Xiaohua also smiled bitterly. He also knew about this, but the problem was that Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuha had disappeared for more than 1 or 2 years. They disappeared when Xiaohua was at the beginning of the 12th level of qi refinement. Now that Xiaohua was at the peak of the late stage of foundation establishment, they still hadn't appeared. Moreover, if they could be found, the 3 kingdoms of cultivation would have found them long ago. Why wait until now? The Gale snowfield is in front. Li Zongbao took out a jade slip, looked at it for a moment and pointed, "With the speed of the flowing cloud flying boat, we'll be there in 2 days. Where did Senior Brother Li get the news? This place is so far away from the Sky Patrol City, who would know that Qingjian would come here?" Xiaohua asked with some doubts. He, Li Zongbao smiled mysteriously, "This news was revealed by Qingjian himself." "I don't understand." Xiaohua was even more puzzled. Chapter 2389. That Qingjian thinks too highly of himself. In these past few years, he often released some specious news to lure our Tao sect cultivators to go there and then ambush them. And those disciples who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth are also strange. They clearly know that it's inappropriate, but they still fall into the trap. It's as if they think that only they can see through the trap and only they can kill Qingjian. Li Zongbao explained, and this news was obtained from one of the elders on duty at the assembly hall. So that's how it is. I'm afraid it's because of the reward from the Yanxi Mansion's assembly hall? Xiaohua nodded, but he was secretly criticizing Li Zongbao in his heart. What was the difference between Li Zongbao's actions and those disciples who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth? After flying for another half a day, the mountains and rivers below the flying boat gradually disappeared. Huge ice lakes and continuous glaciers began to appear. Above the ice lakes, the ice was as hard as iron, abnormally sparkling and translucent. It was like a huge mirror that reflected the bright sunlight into the sky. And the glaciers were like jade ribbons that coiled around the ice plains. It was a spectacular sight. When he looked again, he saw that in the distance, there was a faint mist that covered half of the sky. That's where the glacier's geothermal energy is. Seeing Xiaohua look into the distance, Li Zongbao explained, "As the saying goes, there's yin and yang and yin. Yin and yang have always been symbiotic. In this extremely cold place in Huan country, there will often be geothermal energy rising from the ground, giving birth to a kind of hot spring. The water of this hot spring is warm, and even in extremely cold places it won't freeze. It's completely different from the cold of the glaciers here. It's a strange scene in the world. After you and I kill Qingjian, we'll go and take a look." "Ah, very good." Xiaohua smiled and nodded. But in an instant, his mind suddenly moved as if there was some reaction from the hand of karma. "There's yang and yin and yang? These words sound very familiar? It seems to be related to something." But when he thought about it carefully, he couldn't figure it out. He was completely baffled and couldn't even touch the boundary. Since it's from the hand of karma, it must be very important. Ever since Xiaohua experienced the feeling of karma a few times, he knew the crux of the matter. He already understood that everything in this world was made up of karma. If he could control karma, then he would be able to avoid karma. If he could avoid karma, then he would be able to escape from the mortal world. This was extremely useful for his own cultivation. Therefore he attached great importance to anything related to karma. Could it be that this Tao of yin and yang is the karma that I sensed in the great formation of Mount Quanjin? If that's the case, then we still have to make a trip to the geothermal glacier. Seeing that Xiaohua was deep in thought again, Li Zongbao was bewildered. After thinking for a moment, he didn't know what he had said to Xiaohua. Thus, he didn't say anything and closed his eyes to regulate his breathing. In 2 days he would have to face Qingjian. Qingjian was a sword cultivator with a fierce reputation. Li Zongbao didn't have full confidence in defeating him. Xiaohua thought for a moment and opened his eyes thoughtfully. Seeing that Li Zongbao had closed his eyes again, he didn't say anything. Instead, he urged the flowing cloud-flying ship to continue moving forward. At the same time, he took out the Jade Talisman Refinement Manual from the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain and reviewed it again. Xiaohua had already tried to comprehend this elementary and somewhat incomplete jade talisman back when he was at Tianmen Mountain. Unfortunately, he didn't have any jade essences for him to practice on. Now that he had a lot of jade essences in his space, how could he not take out the matter of refining jade talismans? 2 days passed quickly. Xiaohua scanned the area with his divine sense but couldn't see a single person. He couldn't help but ask, "Senior Brotherly, is this the Gale Snowfield? Where are those disciples lying in ambush?" "I don't know either," Li Zongbao said softly, "just fly slowly, you'll see them eventually." "Ah? You don't know?" Xiaohua was astonished. "Of course I don't know," Li Zongbao said matter-of-factly, "however the Gale Snowfield is only 10,000 li in size. If those disciples were to fight with Qin Jian, I'll definitely see them. You just have to look for them slowly, okay?" "Ah, so it's the legendary waiting for rabbits." Xiaohua understood. He had no choice but to activate the flying boat again and fly aimlessly above the glacier. He also released his divine sense and kept searching. On the Gale Snowfield, above a square ice lake, the sun was shining brightly. The pale white sunlight scattered weakly on the surface of the lake. The mirror-like ice layer reflected the light to a protrusion on a mountain peak not far away. That protrusion was also a layer of ice. It was astonishingly thick. The light passed through the ice layer and gathered on the ground at the foot of the mountain. After the light gathered, it was so hot that it was far hotter than the heat from the sky. In just a moment, water vapor rose from the ice and snow at the foot of the mountain. As the sun moved in the sky, the water vapor also moved like an earthworm. Phew, just as the earthworm moved to the side of a stone, a light flashed frequently. After a yellow light was annihilated, a tall middle-aged man appeared in the light. The middle-aged man's face was filled with confusion. He patted his hand and took out a talisman from his body. It was the rare invisibility talisman in the Dawn Rain continent. Strange. The middle-aged man looked left and right as if he was looking for something. When his gaze landed on the water vapor, he patted his forehead and laughed. "Damn it, so it's this. I actually encountered such a miraculous thing." Then, the middle-aged man raised his head and looked at another place not far away. He shouted, "Senior Brother Qin, Quan Jie, what are you doing? Why aren't you hiding yourself quickly? If Qin Jin sees you, won't our ambush fail?" A slightly impatient voice sounded from the direction Quan Jie was looking at. "Tisk," Quan Jie snorted and sat down disapprovingly. He patted his hand and took out a white spiritual fruit from the storage bag at his waist. He took a bite and a milky white juice seeped out of the spiritual fruit and flowed into Quan Jie's mouth. "This has been hidden for 10 days and not a single sword cultivator came. I'm afraid this news didn't even reach the sword cultivator's ears. Or maybe Qin Jian didn't even want to accept our challenge. Why do you still have this milky rain fruit?" Senior Brother Chen was surprised. Then, with a flash of light, a short cultivator with a dark and thin face appeared. "Hee, I took this from the sword cultivator's storage bag," Quan Jie replied with a smile. He patted his hand and another milky rain fruit was thrown to Senior Brother Chen. "That swordswoman who gestated her sword?" Senior Brother Chen was surprised. He caught the milky rain fruit and took a bite. Then he smiled lewdly. "This taste is similar to that swordswoman's." "Yes, it's that swordswoman's." Quan Jie was also reminiscing. "I didn't expect that a swordswoman who gestated her sword would have so many good things in her storage bag." "Tisk tisk," Senior Brother Chen smacked his lips and said, "It's a pity for that swordswoman." "Hee, what's there to pity? In this war there are many swordswomen like her. You can find as many as you want. Are you afraid that you can't find her?" Shoo, Senior Brother Chen seemed to have thought of something. He stretched out his index finger and gestured for Quan Jie to keep quiet. Then he said softly, "It's enough for you and me to know about this. There are many cultivators lying in ambush in the Gale Snowfield today. If news of this spreads to the sect, it will be disadvantageous to both of us." I understand." Quan Jie smiled lewdly and said, "Those are just entertainment for us during the war. Killing Qin Jian is the most important thing. If you and I were to kill Qin Jian and obtain the reward from the discussion hall, we will definitely be rewarded when we return to our sect. Not to mention our future path of cultivation, even our junior sisters will be impressed by us. What is this female swordsman worth?" It's just that." Senior Qian lifted his head to look at the sky and said worriedly, "Just as Junior Quan said, we don't know if Qin Jian has received the challenge. If he doesn't come, wouldn't our formation be useless? Why don't we release my spiritual bird?" Quan Jie thought for a while and asked softly. Senior brother Qian shook his head slightly. This is the Huan Kingdom. The bird cultivators of the Huan Kingdom are very powerful. Their spirit beasts are much more powerful than those of the Black Spirit sect. If some of the bird cultivators are in the Gale Snowfield, won't they discover the spiritual bird immediately? If that's the case, our location will be exposed. Then, we can't just wait like this. Quan Jie smacked his lips and smiled apologetically. After waiting for so long, why don't we go somewhere else and see if there are any swordsmen who are alone? Alright, wait for a while. I will go and ask Pan Hao. Senior brother Qian thought for a while and nodded. He turned and flew away softly. He is just a disciple of the Xuanyan school. Seeing that senior brother Qian had left, Quan Jie's lips curled up slightly. He seemed to be disdainful. If I had also entered the Xuanyan school, I would have already condensed my core. How can I be like him, who is only in the middle stage of foundation establishment? What is there to be proud of? If not for the fact that I have some use for him, he probably wouldn't even recognize me? As he said that, Quan Jie didn't dare to be careless. He put the milk rain fruit into his mouth and activated the invisibility talisman. He stuck it on his body and disappeared. Senior brother Qian was Qian Feng. Like Quan Jie, he was also a disciple of the spirit husbandry sect. Hopefully, they were both at the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment and were close to the middle stage of foundation establishment. The spirit husbandry sect was considered a small sect in the country of Xi, and there weren't many disciples participating in the war. Therefore, the two of them weren't sent to the Sky Patrol City. However, since the two of them participated in the encirclement of Chao Wu's soul in the Flame Forest Swamp decades ago and benefited from it, their cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds from the early stage of foundation establishment to the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment. They coveted the middle stage of foundation establishment and knew that if they simply cultivated within the sect, they wouldn't have the chance to easily enter the middle stage of foundation establishment. If they wanted to improve further, they would have to be like the Flame Forest Swamp and obtain some opportunities. Chapter 2390. Coincidentally, the battle between Dao cultivators had begun. Although they were not selected, they came to the vicinity of Sky Patrol City in the name of training. In the beginning, the two of them were really apprehensive. However, when they arrived at the Sentry City on the battlefield, they realized that there were many cultivators like them who wanted to seek opportunities and take advantage of the situation. Not only did the council hall not blame them, it even gave them a lot of convenience. For example, the meeting hall offered a reward for killing Qin Jian. Regardless of whether the cultivators were participating in the battle or not, as long as they killed Qin Jian, the reward would be the same. Of course, the two of them did not plan to kill Qin Jian. They only carefully searched the vicinity of Sky Patrol City or the border of Huan country for lone swordsmen. If they encountered a group of swordsmen, they would immediately escape. If they could not escape, they would send a signal for help to the Dao sect cultivators. In short, they had the intention of taking advantage of others. The two of them were also lucky. After several years of war, the two of them had obtained many benefits. Their cultivation had been improving and they were much stronger than when they were in spirit husbandry sect. Therefore, the two of them became bolder and bolder. Half a year ago, the two of them met Pan Hao, a disciple of Xuanyan cult who was about to leave Sky Patrol City. Pan Hao had some old acquaintances with Qian Feng. The three of them chatted for a while and Pan Hao invited the two of them to the Gale Snowfield. He said that someone had organized an ambush to kill Qin Jian and had issued a challenge to Qin Jian. He invited the two of them to participate. When Qian Feng and Quan Jie heard that they were going to ambush the illusory swordsman, they shook their heads and flatly refused. However, Pan Hao explained in detail that the person who organized the ambush was a golden core cultivator and there were more than 300 Dao sect cultivators participating in the ambush. They were tempted. What was more special was when Pan Hao explained that they only needed to use their spiritual birds to find out Qin Jian's whereabouts. They did not need to fight with Qin Jian. As long as they killed Qin Jian, they would be able to obtain credit and a reward. They could no longer suppress their desire and immediately agreed to work with Pan Hao. However, Pan Hao and the other Xuanyan school disciples had come to the Gale Snow Plains to reinforce a small spirit stone mine in Xuanyan school. This ambush was arranged for half a year later and they did not follow Pan Hao and the other Xuanyan school disciples to the Gale Snow Plains. The two of them set off from Sky Patrol City alone and killed many sword-nurturing swordsmen along the way. Only then did they arrive here satisfied. But when he arrived here, Quan Jie discovered something wrong. The Gale Snowfield was simply too cold. His spirit bird could not stay in the air for too long. It could only fly outside for the time it took to brew a cup of tea before it had to turn back. Otherwise it would be frozen to death. And in the time it took to brew a cup of tea, how high and how far could the spirit bird fly? As a result, Pan Hao and the others treated Quan Jie coldly again. They even vaguely mentioned that if Quan Jie and Chen Feng were of no use, even if they killed Qin Jian, they would not be able to obtain the reward they mentioned earlier. Quan Jie was naturally unhappy. Because of this he almost fell out with Pan Hao. Therefore when he saw Chen Feng looking for Pan Hao, Quan Jie showed disdain. After a while, Chen Feng turned back and sent a message to Quan Jie, asking him to release the spirit bird. When Quan Jie heard that, he had no choice but to reveal himself again. He took out a fiery red strange bird the size of a palm from the spirit storage bag on his right. The strange bird's head was triangular, like an earthworm's beak. A flesh pouch the size of a thumb hung in front of its chest. When it spread its fiery red wings, the feathers opened up, revealing the red bird's skin under the feathers. Go, Quan Jie instructed in a low voice. The spirit bird circled in the air a few times and shot up into the sky like a sharp arrow. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared. Tisk, Chen Feng, who was beside him, revealed a tinge of envy in his eyes. He said in a low voice, Junior brother Quan, your spirit bird is getting more and more powerful. Back then the soul was not used in vain. Senior brother Qian, didn't your Lian Bao also devour souls? Why are you envious of me? Quan Jie was secretly happy, but his face showed that he did not care. How can it be compared? Chen Feng smiled bitterly. I Lian Bao have not improved as fast as your little thing these years. Chen Feng still wanted to say more, but Quan Jie's face tightened and he hurriedly looked up at the sky. Oh, there's news? Chen Feng immediately shut up and asked in a low voice. Quan Jie ignored him and only narrowed his eyes to look at the sky. After half a cup of tea's time, the spiritual bird once again fell from the sky. Its fiery red feathers were now covered with ice, and its triangular bird head was also trembling slightly. When it landed in Quan Jie's hand, Quan Jie only felt a wave of coldness. Quan Jie did not dare to delay and hurriedly put the spirit bird into the spirit storage bag. How is it? Chen Feng asked anxiously again. Well? Quan Jie hesitated slightly and sent a message. About 15 kilometers west of here, there are more than 10 sword cultivator disciples. Oh? Sword cultivator disciples? More than 10? Chen Feng frowned. What are they doing? They're in a sorry state. Their sword armor is tattered and they look nervous, as if they were defeated and fled. Quan Jie narrowed his eyes and said. Chen Feng's face instantly lit up with joy. According to his and Quan Jie's experience, these scattered disciples were the easiest to bully. As long as the two of them showed themselves, these disciples would definitely flee at the sight of them. They did not need to put on airs. And they only needed to focus on a few swordsmen, and they would most likely succeed. However, Chen Feng's joy disappeared in a flash. There's no trace of Qin Jian? No. Quan Jie replied, and his tone suddenly had some impatience. How could his thoughts not be the same as Chen Feng's? Forget it. Chen Feng also knew Quan Jie's thoughts and sent a message, don't mess up Pan Hao's plan. We can't afford to offend Xuanyan School. I know. Quan Jie nodded, but his eyes turned slightly and smiled. Should we tell them about this? Chen Feng hesitated slightly, but when he saw Quan Jie's smile, he understood and nodded. Of course, aren't we here to send a message? How can we not tell them? Then Chen Feng flew away again, but not long after he turned back and sent a message. Pan Hao also asked that Golden Core Senior, but the Golden Core Senior ignored him. Quan Jie was a little disappointed. Another 2 hours passed. If it were any other time, Quan Jie definitely wouldn't release the spirit bird so quickly. However, today his heart felt as if it was being scratched by a cat's paw. He couldn't help but slap his hand and release the spirit bird from his spirit storage bag once again. When the spiritual bird suddenly appeared, the feathers on its body suddenly exploded, and its entire body trembled as if it was extremely uncomfortable. That you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.